think I see Jim.
No, I'd salute the flag first.
Yeah, salute the flag.
Yeah, I thought you said don't do it.
No, salute it and then open here.
Oh,
Sorry.
Perfect timing.
Sorry.
How'd you do? We haven't opened yet.
Ready?
You haven't opened yet?
No, I'm sorry.
switch.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Ready to go.
welcome to tonight's meetings. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. Mr. Clerk, would you please honor the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Fruit flies. All right.
Look at me.
So we're just going to open the hearing
Yep.
and then have the legislators.
Yep. All right. Tonight's agenda, we have a public hearing continued on Cooper Farm property, 180 Great Road. 2 at member updates and public input. No, input and updates. FY 216 state budget, the community preservation playground. Read mail, public input, members update. 8 o'clock, public hearing, transfer station fees regulations. 8:30, public hearing continued, adoption of goals for FY 2016. 8:45, town administrator, assistant town administrator, bond anticipation for Church Meadows, roadway improvement plan, New Estate Road, construction contract, highway, street scan, pavement, management, data and services. D, policy adoption, short notice requiring town position. E, a Sunny Delight update, it's not so sunny. And other business, consent agenda minutes approval. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to continue the Cooper Farm property public hearing. We're going to open the meeting with that. We're going to start, and then we're going to have a continuance until we get done with our local legislators. So, again, I will read the public hearing notice for the Cooper Farm property, 180 Great Road. Littleton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, July 13th at 7:30, actually continued today on August 10th at 6:30 in the town offices, room 103, Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass, regarding the proposal of 34.23 acres Cooper Farm property located at 180 Great Road, and the seller's forthcoming request to the Board of Selectmen to waive the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, subsection 14, to require the properties for $1.845 million. Seller has submitted a proposal, to develop said property as a 23-lot subdivision, along with requirements for 9 acres frontage on Great Road for open space, recreation, and/or community gardens, 5 acres for 12-unit over 55 development with 3 affordable units, 25%, 1 acre with the existing farmhouse to be donated for affordable housing, perimeter walk trail, sidewalks, and relocation of the long store to said property if desired. The purpose of the hearing is to obtain public input on the seller's proposal and on the request that the Board of Selectmen waive the town's right of first refusal. Exercising the right of the first refusal would require the town meeting vote to acquire the property. The Board of Selectmen would reach a determination by early September on whether A, to waive the town's right of first refusal without condition, allowing a development to proceed as proposed, subject to the seller obtaining all required regulatory approvals, or B, to waive the town's right of first refusal conditioned upon the seller making such amendments as the Board of Selectmen may require to set forth in a host community agreement with the Board of Selectmen, or C, not to waive the town's first right of refusal, and instead insert an article onto the warrant for November 2015. A copy of the proposal is on file with the town selectmen and the town administrator's office, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. 01460, and available online, littletonma.org. Comments hereon may be submitted in writing to said office by noon last Friday, or in person at the hearing. Littleton Board of Selectmen, James F. Carr, Chairman. I don't want to read that too many more times. So early September is when we're going to make the decision. Again, this is for public input. We're looking for public input. We're not going to make a decision tonight. We want to make sure that the town has enough opportunity to have their voices heard, and by early September is when we'll make the decision. So the hearing is now open. I'd make a motion for a suspension of said meeting.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. So we will reconvene into this public hearing after our legislators are done here. So, Jamie, Jim, could you come forward, please? It's a great thing tonight. I'm sorry.
We have playground people here too.
Oh, where are they? Where's Christie?
Right there.
Come on in. So tonight, I got a call, actually, we've been working on this since, when did the budget actually start your process, Jim?
Well, the process actually started in late January, a little late this year. House won the governor's proposal, and then we finished up a couple weeks back now.
Right. So, part of the budget request from Littleton was $100,000 to supplement funding for the Castle in the Trees playground. And we know that the Littleton Children's Foundation?
Littleton Children's Fund.
Littleton Children's Fund has been working very hard to raise money for this. In contact with Jim and Jamie, we set forth on an adventure to try and get some money from the state for this project and this great playground that we have in this town. That being said, I'll turn it over to our legislators. I personally want to thank you both for your cooperation in this. But why don't you give us an update, and give everybody an update as to what you actually did for us?
Sure. First, I'd like to say, I don't want to speak for the senator because we'll both say a few things, but it's nice to actually be thanked by a town or board of selectmen, so thank you. That doesn't always happen with us all the time. So that's wonderful and a first, so thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is a labor of love and certainly a team effort. Each and every one of us that are on the elected boards, we really care very much about public service, but we care about making our community a better place as well. But that doesn't stop there. I mean, certainly this is a team effort throughout the community. Christy Bates had come to me through Littleton, the Littleton Foundation, as well as the Castle in the Trees team. And the Senator and I working very well together in this town and being BFFs and good friends, we were able to put something together in legislative form, and I got my job done in the House. The Senator got his done in the Senate, but also the Board of Selectmen. For us, we can't do our job unless we know what the needs are, and certainly each and every one of you helped us a lot with the information we needed, and the proper advocacy as well, because you guys helped quite a bit with letter writing and for supporting us do our job a little bit better. So I want to thank you for that help. We got the budget done in the House and the Senate. Then Governor Baker, he has a very, very difficult decision to make out of $38 billion, and Castle and Trees was one earmark that was actually vetoed. And about a week and a half ago, the Senator and I, both in the House and the Senate, were able to override his veto. So we're very happy and pleased that Castle and Trees will now have $100,000.
Fantastic. Senator.
I would just add, first of all, I want to commend the board as well as everyone involved with the Castle in the Trees playground, including Christie, because this idea came obviously here from Littleton, and this was the first budget, I would say, in about 4 or 5 years where there was finally discussion about specifically setting aside money for specific projects in communities that we represent as legislators. So I appreciate Keith reaching out first to Jim very early in the budget process. To get it in the House was extremely key, and then I was fortunate to get it to the Senate, and that was, not to go into too much detail, but when you have anything that's in both the House and Senate, that means it's guaranteed to be in the final budget. So we had that assurance. We did have to take an override vote, but really realize what a difference playgrounds make in every community, and it's really about quality of life. I know this board and so many residents in Littleton have been working to dramatically improve the quality of life here in Littleton, so really happy for the timeline for it to become a reality within a couple of years, and the state to do its part with raising the money necessary to upgrade the playground. So thanks again for your contributions and assistance, and it really was, as Representative Arcero said, a very collaborative effort.
Yeah, thank you very much, too. Comments?
I'd just like to, I'm sorry, I was going to say,
And I'll give
excellent
Christie a word.
partnership between the two of you. Like you said, to have it in both is secured to the final line. That's excellent to see. We have such great alignment and support for our community, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I wanted to give
We're
a
gonna
shout
go-
out, if I could, to Joe Cataldo, too, who
Sure.
had a big hand in starting sort of this initial collaborative, as the Senator said, process of moving forward. So if I could shout out to Joe on TV somewhere.
So we're gonna save Christie for last, because she's the big thing going out the door, so. Any other comments?
No, just thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks, Representative.
All right.
Joe? Thank you.
So I just want to
It's your
say a
floor.
huge thank you
There you
to
go.
both Jim and Jamie and the Board of Selectmen. Sarah Donovan couldn't be here, she's the president of LCF, but she also extends her thanks. And we came to the Board of Selectmen in December with a proposal after getting a good group of people from Littleton who wanted to work on the rebuild committee, and came up with a number of $300,000, which seems unbelievably daunting to try to raise, but the playground is worth it, and all the families that were there wanted to keep that playground going. They have a lot of great memories and want to maintain those memories for their children and their children's children. When we were here in December, Joe Cataldo, as you mentioned, Jim, he saw us on TV, and he called in and said, I want to help, and he cut about $75,000 off of our funds that we needed to raise by offering to demolish the existing playground when the time comes and to prepare the site for the new one. And then, thanks to all of you for the $100,000 for the state, we're almost 2/3 of the way to our original goal, and we hope to build in September of 2016, and possibly September 20th to the 25th, and everyone write it down because it is going to be a community build, so everybody can show up with their hammers, and hopefully we'll be building it then, and I feel like we will definitely get there thanks to your help. And I also must say, Dave McManus might be listening. He is running a golf outing that we're having on September 25th at Shaker Hills in Harvard, and it's everything. It's to benefit the playground.
And your website?
Is castleinthetrees.org.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, both of you.
Chairman.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, so now we're going to reconvene our public hearing for the Cooper Farm property. Just as a little update, last time we had the public hearing, there was great discussion, a lot of comments coming in. One comment that stuck in particular was, did we ask the other boards and committees in towns for their opinion or what they thought of the property? And the answer was no. So since then, we had sent out an email, and I believe we got every committee and every board got the email, and a majority of them have responded.
A number of them have.
Yeah, a number of them have. So, and they're all on the website. I'd love to read all the comments that are coming in, but there's a really lot of them. So I would recommend you go to the website. Keith has created a specific link just for the Cooper Farm property.
Yeah, it's littletonma.org/Cooper Farm, and we have put all of the comments that have been received thus far, as of 5 o'clock anyway. If you came in late, they're not posted yet, but you've done a good job of keeping up. All of the comments are available for all to see. Thank Jen for all that she's done in maintaining this very busy website for the last couple of years.
So that's kind of an update. We have the Fields and Sherry, their attorney here in the audience. If there's anything you want to say, come on up front for any updates. And I will open it up for public input for this hearing once the board is deliberated, after we see what the update from the petitioners are.
So I just want to make a couple of preliminary comments. We initially started this process with meetings with the Selectmen, asking you to conduct a hearing to vet this project to determine what was the town's sentiment about buying it or not buying it, and to waive your right of first refusal based on those hearings. It's clear to me that the Selectmen have seen a lot of people in this town who are against waiving the right of first refusal. So it's clear to me that there may not be any further reason to conduct these hearings relative to waiving the right of first refusal. The next question is, what are the other options available to both the Coopers and the Fields? One is to let the Coopers, to have the Coopers let it go out of 61A, wait a year, and then determine to sell it. And another is to have the Fields convert their offer to a bona fide offer without contingencies. That doesn't mean without amenities. I just want to be clear about that. What made this offer unacceptable as a bona fide offer was that it had contingencies that the Fields were, it was conditioned on the Fields getting development approval. It was not the amenities that the Fields offered that made this a non-bona fide offer. So the Fields have the option of converting this to a bona fide offer with no development contingencies on their part, but according to the Coopers, keeping in those amenities that are very important to the Coopers. If that's done, this would then, as I see it, the town has two options. The town has to take it to town meeting for a vote, and it needs a 2/3 vote to pass for the town to buy it and exercise its right of first refusal. Or I believe the town can assign its right of first refusal to a charitable or a nonprofit entity. And if that's done, the nonprofit entity can develop 30% of the property. So at this point in time, I don't really know what the Fields are planning to do. I'm not really sure what the Coopers are planning to do. They are meeting again to discuss those options and what would be in everyone's best interest. And you're certainly free to go forward and continue to hear from the people that came out tonight to speak. But I am convinced that this board is not of the mind to vote to waive the right of first refusal. So if you want to save time and energy, I think that's off the table at this point. I will tell you that since the last meeting, the Fields had the wetlands flagged because there were a lot of people who challenged whether or not the wetlands could be developed. And as a result of that flagging, Keith, I believe we sent you that. I don't know if you were able to get it on.
Yeah, I just took it off of this, and let me put it up here.
We don't have.
So we had it reconfigured, we had the
No,
wetlands delineated, we've now,
Reduce that.
What?
Reduce that.
we reduced the number of lots from 23 to 21.
Putting it on the
Wetlands.
board. We got this when I walked into the room tonight.
It still contains the 300 feet setback for the open space, with the exception of the road going into both the lacrosse field and the development. And as you can see, there's a lot more open space in the middle of the property that's wetlands and around the back end of the property. And there's a big area of open space over there in the back, which may be protected wildlife habitat. So at this point in time, this developer is proposing to develop far less than 50% of the property. Now, I want you to compare that to if the town assigns its rights to a private developer. That private developer can develop 30% of the property, and you don't have any control as to what 30% they would develop. Typically, a developer would want to develop the frontage lots because they're the easiest to get to and the fastest way to turn a buck and get the money to buy the rest of it. I just put that out there. And the other thing I had done was I had an aerial photographer take an aerial view, and I sent this, but I don't think they could do a panoramic on the computer. I apologize for that. But this is the aerial view. The top one is the aerial view from the street of the Cooper Farm today. That was taken from the sign at the Neshoba Tubing Park looking down the road. And then what we had him do is superimpose the houses that are shown on this conceptual plan and where they would fall. And I don't know if everyone can see that, but maybe the selectmen could pass it around. The elevation drops down so that the houses where they start would be 14 feet below the street grade. And in Littleton, the maximum height a house can be is 32 feet. So only the top 16 feet of the houses would be seen, visible from the street, behind a tree line, and the developer proposes to add more trees so that you really would be hard-pressed to see most of it. And again, what you would see is 300 feet away. So for private money, you end up with exactly the same view from Great Road that you have now, with that exception of a few housetops in the back there that may or may not be seen depending on whether the planning board and the town votes to have the developer. And one of the reasons we came here early on was in asking you to waive the right of first refusal is because we were ultimately optimistic that everyone would input their wish list and we could work with a host community agreement to do such things as conceal those houses from the street and leave the native views, and even negotiate with you over whether the ball field was a lacrosse field or a soccer field, or whether it's open space or community farm or whatever. So I don't feel that that's the way these meetings have gone, and I'm discouraged that it seems more like you have decided that this is a property the town wants to buy. Whatever happens, you're going to buy this property. And so, like I said, we're back to negotiating with the Coopers if that's ultimately what they want, or if they want to honor their deal to this developer, or what's going to happen next. I just don't know.
Okay, so I guess just one question about, because that's the first time we're seeing it. So the over 55 is just 21 houses? Is that what I'm...
No, there's a section in the back corner right here,
Oh, I got
where
you.
the 55 will go right here.
Gotcha. Still
It's
12
similar to White
units?
Street, and it's built on less than 4 acres.
Gotcha. Still the 12 units?
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 affordable.
Okay. All right. All right, so before I open it up to the board for questions, Sherry, I think, when this first came down, we talked, and we said we want to hear from the town. We wanted to hear from the town. The board hasn't deliberated, hasn't made, to my knowledge, hasn't made any decisions in regards to that. We were planning on doing it, in early September. The way the clock was rolling, that timetable that we were talking about. I have read a lot of those emails, and they're all on the website, and, there was a strong, strong sentiment out there about this property and the desire to acquire it, so, and that, you are right. The townspeople have been speaking very, very loudly, so. We'll see how this goes tonight, and possibly that we can schedule it for the next meeting to make a final decision. I just want to make sure everybody in town, because there's a lot of vacations going on, if there are anybody else out there, we just want to make sure that people are heard. So that's all I have. Board members, Mr. Knox?
If I could, I have 2 things. First, with that new road going in,
Sorry.
with the new road going in, does the tree line stay there?
Yes.
Okay, I did, so that...
Behind the tree
It's
line.
behind the tree line?
It's actually, there's 2 tree lines. If you go out and look, there's a tree line somewhere in about this area going across, and then there's another one on this back side. So there's actually 2 tree lines on this side over here.
The only other comment I have right now, Mr. Chairman, is that what is offered by the developer and the owners of the property, we know what the sentiment of the town's been so far. I've read all those emails. I mean, I know of no other property in town that people have got behind so much. But at the same time, if it had been a different piece of property, with what was being offered, with the town getting 9 acres of free land on a major road, a house, and possibly a field, or even if that was agriculture, if we had other properties that owners offer something like that, we'd be jumping up and down. It's just a circumstance of this, for what I can see so far, this being a special piece of property to the people. I think what you'd offered is fantastic, and the town gets a house out of it. Could be town use, could be habitat or whatever, and you have all that space. Where else do you get 9 acres for nothing? I mean, we'd spend zero.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to
Yes.
speak to that because you raised it, Mr. Knox. We have a unique situation in Littleton where we have farmland all along Great Road from past Danny Pickard's going all the way past Matheson's and Wilkins down there. There's farmland both sides of the street. We can't buy everything. I can't stress that enough. This proposal before the town, and I understand the sentiment to preserve the vistas, and that's what this proposal tries to do, but this proposal is asking the town to spend $2 million plus for 30 acres. That's not a sensible dollars and cents analysis of raw land, no matter how you cut it. And if that happens, next you're going to have the Sanderson property, you're going to have the Durkee Farm property, you're going to have Bulkley Road properties, you're going to have the K properties. There's a whole lot of stuff coming up. You can't buy it all. So again, we tried to propose something where, as Mr. Knox said, the developer is financing your preservation of vistas and your preservation of the entry to Littleton. The developer came here in good faith, asking this town to consider this a model project, just for what Mr. Knox points out.
Thank you.
No, I guess I'd agree with Joe. I mean, for me, I'd probably want to spend more time kind of understanding options, but this is clearly a special piece of property for this town, and there's no denying the sentiment that we need to go forward with, in my opinion. So Sherry's original point, almost, I think that was a good summary. We almost have our answer, regardless of what other data we could pull. But I do think it's a nice proposal.
Mr. Ravello.
Surely, we're going to have an opportunity to work with the FinCom also to look at the logistics of this, the financing of it. So if the town does not waive first right of refusal and decides to go to town meeting and then ask that the townsfolk look to pay for it, we've got to have a bit of a plan going forward before I think this board actually makes the decision. That way it gives a bunch of people an opportunity to put those sorts of things together, whether it's Bonnie working with Keith and certainly the FinCom getting involved, and then some of our other agencies that we deal with also, is to look at what's the package we'd like to put together. Because, $1.8 million, and we'll just use that for the number, because that's certainly what's been advertised, what the actual cost might be is to be determined. But $1.8 million, and there's certainly grants available, there's other agencies that perhaps funding could come from, but at some point the town of Littleton will have to ante up some dollars. So those dollars are not to be used for something else then. It's just an opportunity cost analysis that goes into this too. So we look at it, and for some folks certainly, if the price was $5 million, buy it for $5 million, notwithstanding your analysis there, Attorney Gold. But it's certainly something less than that at this point. So we don't have to make that decision tonight as you suggested. I think gathering more information and then certainly sitting down with the FinCom and getting our folks doing the financials on it, and what will we not do in town if we decide to purchase the property. And that becomes part of the package, I think, that we offer the townsfolk, so that people at town meeting can look at, if we go down this road, we won't be doing something else. And what might those something else's be? And, excuse for the poor English in that regard, but it could be multiple projects, small projects, or one large project, whether we view it in terms of something in the schools, something on the roads. We're going to have a Neshoba Road tonight discussion. We're going to have a street scan discussion. So as we're doing our roads, what are we spending our money on? And do we want to finance, or do we want to stay what's inside the levy? Those sorts of conversations still have to take place. And then it's a much more informed decision, and that way it's a package that's presented with options to folks at town meeting at that point, should we take it that way. I think your assessment is quite valid, however, everything else notwithstanding, is that the lien is, perhaps it's going to be a town meeting decision at some point. And perhaps that's only fair given, and maybe call it emotional attachment, and that would not be unfair, because we have an emotional attachment to our town. The Vista word gets thrown about somewhat loosely, but still it's a preservation of character of the town. All that said, you folks are coming forward with, I think, it's a very good proposal. In other words, you're considering the town, You're looking at what's important to you folks in business, but you're also looking forward to as how you live in Littleton as Littleton residents yourselves, and members of the community also. You're not aliens. You're not out from some other town. You're not coming into town to try and scour the earth and, pillage and burn. You're here to try and do a good thing. And that's, for me personally, as we're looking at it, how does your offer fit into what the town likes to see? And then certainly what the folks in town would like to see, that property and what's available. So I certainly want to thank everybody in town who has written in, called in, spoken. Certainly very much appreciate the inputs. And I'd also like to thank you all for thoughtful consideration on how you've put this package together.
Thank you.
But I think it also gives us an opportunity, and Attorney Gould used these two words first time you all were here, compromise and negotiate, and maybe we're not done yet, is how I'd leave that at this point. Thank you.
Mr. DeCoste.
Well, let me start by saying, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but Attorney Gould, I haven't made up my mind. So I don't really, I couldn't tell you right now which way I'm going. So I think that this exercise is a good one. So for your opening comments where, let's cut to the chase here. If we're not going to do it, let's not do it. I think that each of us are trying to do what we think is right and hear as much as we can from every resident, if every resident wants to be heard. And clearly, those folks that want us to purchase the land and not waive our right are very organized. We've gotten many, many letters, many of them written, look like they were cut and paste in many cases. I mean, a lot of people are saying the same things. I will say that I've heard from, I won't say as many as I've received emails in my inbox, but I was on, to Jim's point, there's a lot of people on vacation. I was on vacation last week, and my phone kept blowing up. Thanks, Keith. And I do appreciate that. Everybody should be heard. And for people to get involved and to let their opinion be heard is good. That's the way our system works, our form of government works. But I will say that I've heard several people who are in favor of the developer's project and who have reached out to me either on my phone, have run into me around town. I had 4 different people from Littleton that I ran into. It felt like I was in Littleton up at Lake Winnipesaukee. But I had 4 different people that I know that I ran into up in Littleton spoke to me about this particular project, and they were all in favor of it. So there's a lot of support for the developer out there. I will say they're not as organized, they're not as vocal, but we want to make sure that everything is heard, that we put forward the opportunity for everybody to be heard, and we make a decision based on what we feel, the 5 folks that you guys elected, what we feel is best for the town based on the input that we get from you. So, again, thank you to everyone who's come forward. Thank you to the Fields, to Attorney Gould for all the preparation, all of the information, Keith and Jennifer for allowing it to funnel to us and funnel to everybody. I think there was an email that came across that thanked us for the transparency, and I think that we've learned something through this process relative to transparency, I guess, because this is, I feel as though, as one of the biggest things that I've been a part of as a new selectman, this has been an education for me, and I'm proud of the way it's being handled, and I look forward to seeing it through and making a good decision based on the information that we receive.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Sherry? Fields? No? Mike? No, okay. So what I'd do then is let's look for a motion to close this hearing, and we can open it up for public input.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, so now for public input, I ask that no applause, please. We have a lot of folks in here, and I want as many people as we can to get up and talk. Please stand. Tell us who you are and where you live, so folks at home can understand that you are a resident in town, and we'll take it from there, and we'll just get everybody to talk, whoever wants to talk. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Dina Flockhart. I'm at 61 Gilson Road, and I came tonight because I hadn't heard anything about the project. I don't know whether I'm just wrapped up in my little life or what, but I hadn't seen any pictures, I hadn't seen any plot plans or diagrams or anything else. And I sent an email because I wasn't sure I could make it, and the right of refusal says to me, that's when you look at the plans, and that's when you find out from the developer. As an average townsperson, I had no idea how transparent Sherry had already been. So it could be you're seeing a lot of this because the people in town don't have enough information on the project. And you may have put it out on a website, you may have put it out somewhere, but some of us didn't get it. And that's why you're getting a very knee-jerk reaction, rather than, a cut and paste, rather than more thoughtful input.
I appreciate that. And again, this is our third hearing, I believe, is second one. The second hearing that we've had on this property. We advertise on our website, the agendas are posted 48 hours in advance. We try to communicate to as many people as we can. And again, Mr. Bergman, along with Jen, has so graciously taken the time to post everything online, because there are a lot of letters, folks. And please, if you're interested, just go out and take a peek while you're drinking your coffee in the morning. Next, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I'd just like to say, and I know I've said this before.
I know you can believe it. I don't think.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Kimberly Harriman, Brantley. I know I've expressed this before. I've expressed it in letter. I just want to say simply that waiving the right of refusal cuts off all of our options. I don't think there's any need, whether we talk to developer, don't talk to developer, whatever it is, by waiving it just cuts off that process, whereas if we don't waive it, we get to explore all those options like Paul was talking about how to put a package together, what we really want as a town, bringing it to town meeting, having the whole town talk about it and decide on it in a much slower time period than just this summer. I think that's really important. The other thing that I wanted to say is that 1.8 million option that says it's the third option is exercise the right of refusal and bring the 1.8 million to the town meeting. It's not 1.8 million. There's no number right now. That's the number of the offer that came through with the contingencies. I don't want people to think if you say, okay, we're not going to waive it, now we have to go to town meeting in November and try to come up with $1.8 million. I just wanted to make that clear.
Sure, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Sarah Rambacher, 205 Hartwell. I did send a letter this morning, but I don't think it made it to the website, so I just wanted to comment because I was very struck when I was reading through the letters, especially by one from Nat Whitney, which included an interview with Vincent Cooper. And I hope that everyone will read that and think about the man who put this in place, who left this land, and who was just a remarkable philanthropist. And if you read about him, he gave so much to so many here in Littleton and elsewhere. And reading about him and the interview with him, it just made me think that this is more than vistas and ball fields and wetlands. This is about our town has been left something by someone who cared very much for other people, and it's our responsibility to steward that and to make sure that there is something for the people who come after us. And I hope that I hope that the Board of Selectmen, the trustees of the land, the whole town will read this letter, think about the man that left this for us, and think about how once the land is used, once houses are put on it, it's going to be houses. If anyone knows of a suburban housing development that was ripped down to put in a bean field, let me know, because it doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Jerry During New State Road. I want to, first of all, I think the developers have done a very nice job in terms of amenities for the town. However, I was at the CPC meeting and a number of folks pointed out that residential development usually does not pay its own way in terms of cost of services versus taxes received. And I heard numbers that this development could cost the town, the rest of us taxpayers, $200,000-$300,000 a year forever. One argument for buying it and taking it out of development is, in the long run, it saves the town money. And that's why I would support this. And also, this might get a few folks a little upset, but last spring at town meeting, there was a proposal that would have led us down a $2 million path to putting in artificial turf. If we have funds available for that, that's one example of something that could be foregone to buy a piece of property like this. Sherry's right, we can't buy it all. We often don't have the opportunity to buy it. But here's a case where the town does have the opportunity to preserve a beautiful piece of land that looks like it does tie in with other town properties, and all in all would save the town money and give us an asset forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Nancy living Grist Mill Road. I'm still confused as to what the town is being asked to pay for the property. If we go along with buying the property, I still heard different figures, 1.8 million, but maybe not if you add stuff and it has the town lawyer. Do we have a bona fide offer? I just don't know. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll let town council answer the bona fide offer. The 1.845 is what the offer to the seller is at this point. There hasn't been any appraisal done by the town, nor has there been any history of any appraisals for that specific property. So that 1.845 is what the seller has received in a P&S from the developer. That's where that number came from. Go ahead, Sherry.
If I may just clarify a couple of points that were made. There were appraisals done when, I want to say 3 years ago or maybe 4 years ago. And those appraisals were, I think, maybe Rick can help me with this. Is Rick Finley in the room?
Sure, planner.
Didn't you have an appraisal done for Sudbury Valley trustees?
We had, I think the Conservation Trust put up money for it. It was, I can't remember who else maybe paid for it. But that was done during the low point of the real estate market, and it came in at $700,000. And it was a disappointment, I think, for everybody, because I thought it was very low too. But
Yeah,
so was that.
So good to, and I'll let you finish up, Sherry. To get back to Ms. Levine's questions, that's where the 1.845 came from, an actual P&S that the seller and the buyer have agreed to. Town council, you can tell about the bona fide offer, so folks can understand exactly what that's all about.
Okay, thank you. So Tom Harrington, Town Council. We do not have a bona fide offer. They submitted an offer for us to review, and we determined that it is not a bona fide offer because it had a contingency in it. And kind of under the definition of bona fide, there can be no contingencies. And by contingency, I mean they're reserving their rights to back out of the deal if they don't get a certain permit, which was in the deal. So right now, the town does not have a bona fide offer before it.
Okay. Go ahead, Sherry.
Now, just going further with that, those were developer contingencies. There were also conditions that the seller imposed, whereby the seller only agreed to sell this property for that number if the developer would grant the town certain amenities. And those amenities included a list of things, the most important of which was keep the development back from the road approximately 275 to 300 feet so that the vista would remain. It included restore the house, the farmhouse that's there, to donate for an affordable unit either to the town or to Habitat for Humanity, or as Mr. Finley requested last meeting, maybe for a farmer to occupy. It included creating a ball field because the Coopers were very recreation-minded. It included an affordable housing component for over 55 because the Coopers liked that model that the Fields had built before. So all of those, I'll call them amenities, were things that the Coopers wanted to see in addition to the purchase price. So the reason we can't settle on a purchase price here is A, because the offer isn't without contingencies yet, and because the cost of those amenities are not established yet, which ones are important for the Coopers to require and preserve. I think that's a fair way to say it. Relative, please.
So, yeah, can I just,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, okay?
Absolutely.
So, in my opinion, there are amenities, and if you think about it, the right of first refusal, we're going to step into the shoes of the buyer. So if it says that the buyer shall do something, then we shall do that too. And so from my review of the PNS, we shall preserve 9 acres along the front, and we can use that for active recreation or passive recreation or farmland. But I don't think we're required to build a ball field. I think it's just conserving that land. We're required to construct and set aside, or not construct, I'm sorry, but set aside an easement around the property, a walking easement. So we have to do that. We have to donate the house to either Habitat for Humanity or Littleton Housing Authority. But I don't think it says that we have to rehab it first. I think it's a straight donation. And the land shall be, or 5 acres of the land shall be used for an over 55 12-unit development. So I think the town shall do that. Now, how the town does that is, that can take a number of forms. We can construct it ourselves. We can contract with someone to construct it for us. We can lease the land and have, someone come in and lease the land and construct it themselves and have them operate it. So I think we agree. I think on some of the points about who's doing what, we might disagree, but I will agree that the town does step into the shoes of what the seller has agreed to. So if it says the seller shall, then the town shall, and if it says the seller may, then the town may, but doesn't have to.
Then just a couple more things. I want to comment that Henry Vincent Cooper was a tremendously benevolent and altruistic man. However, he had a family. He left in his will and in his legacy here $1 million to be used as a charitable foundation for the people of the town of Littleton and for community causes that a charitable group of trustees manages for his benefit every year. And I'm proud to say that we usually put $50,000 a year back into the community to things like Loaves and Fishes, Council on Aging, elderly assistance, any kind of youth sports or youth activity. We've funded Eagle projects and we've funded so many things, the library, so many things in this community through the Henry Vincent Charitable Foundation. He didn't leave this farm to the town of Littleton. He left it to his family. And his family has a right to realize the highest and best value for the property. Now, the bona fide offer isn't in yet. When it's in, we'll see what it looks like, as Mr. Harrington pointed out. But these are good soils. This is 1,800 feet of frontage. This property will support 20 to 30 houses all day long without regard to preservation. The real offer for this property could be as high as 2 to 3 million plus, because house lots in Littleton are now up to $150 or $175 a lot. The Coopers are working with Jonathan Avery, an appraisal outfit in Acton, one of the most highly regarded appraisals in the area. In fact, I think recently the Sudbury Valley trustees asked Mr. Avery if he would do a current appraisal on the property because he's the top-notch appraiser around here. Mr. Avery didn't take this developer's offer out of thin air. He took it because he felt it was a fair and reasonable price for the land, given that the developer's offering all the amenities. So I just want to put that out there. There's nothing selfish or greedy about what the Coopers and the Fields are trying to do here. Everybody's trying to be fair. The final thing, I just want to comment to Mr. Jerry Del Priori's comment, and that is relative to the tax analysis. I think I would save the details for town meeting, but I just want to tell you that 12 units on this project will not have any children entering the school system. There's 12 units giving taxes into the tax base. 21 units, all the statistics say only 30 or 40% of houses have children in the school system. But once the kids go through the school system, most of those homeowners stay, like myself and like all of the Fields. Our kids aren't in town anymore and they're not in your schools. We're still paying the same taxes as many of you are. So you can't just say in a nutshell, it's going to be a tax burden on the town. It's going to bring a tax benefit to the town. People are your assets in a community. Without people, you have no community. New people and new life in the town is also a very good thing. So I just want to add all those things into it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Jane Crisfield, Mill Lane. I'm a little confused about the process here, because if you don't have a bona fide offer, and the first right of refusal is in relation to a valid proposal, why are we talking about first right of refusal still, if there is no bona fide offer? And why can't we, as a town, go to the Cooper trustees and make our own deal with them? I'm a little confused about what Mr. Harrington said, because is the proposal that was made with the developer binding on the town? Can't we make our own individual agreement with the Coopers? So
Okay, so we'll address those questions. So first is, why are we talking about a right of first refusal? The answer to that is that they came to us with a plan. They asked the board if we would waive that first right of refusal. The board said, we'll listen to you, but ultimately we want to hear from the people. That's why we're here. We were asked, we didn't come right out and say no. We wanted to hear from the town to see what the town thought of their proposal. That's why we're talking about it. The other question, I'm going to defer to Mr. Harrington.
So the other question was, can we go to the Coopers? Well, the Coopers, as far as I know, have a deal with the Fields right now. So there is a, from my knowledge, a binding purchase and sale agreement. So we can't interfere with a contract, but if something goes amiss between the Fields, or if they no longer have a deal, we certainly can approach the Coopers and talk to them about it.
So that basically means the town is cut out of any decision about purchasing of the land, as long as there's a binding agreement between the developer.
No, I would disagree. So this land is in 61A. If the land is going to be converted to a residential or industrial or commercial use, the town has to get a right of first refusal. But that can only be done with a bona fide purchase and sale agreement, right? So right now, they can't close on the deal because they haven't presented, we can't waive it, or we could waive it, but they can't close on the deal because the town hasn't received a bona fide purchase and sale agreement, a bona fide offer. If and when we do, and I think one of the things they're considering is how do we put this in a shape that makes it a bona fide purchase and sale agreement, then we'll have something to consider. And this board will have had the opportunity to hear from the town and, kind of all the various factors that go into it.
So as town council just pointed out, we're ahead of the game if this does develop into a bona fide offer, because we've gone through this process. We wanted to hear from the developers. The developers asked us to waive. We said we will have public hearing because we want to hear from the townspeople, and that's what we've done.
Can I say something?
Yes, I'll get to you, George.
Sorry. So that was the intention, for everybody to be ahead. I'm sorry, I'm Janet Field. I think you introduced me last. So the
But
intention
everybody
was,
needs to know who
the intent, I'm Janet Field, I don't know, I was introduced before. The intention was to allow for a conversation, to allow the board and the townspeople to discuss. Like, so this wasn't, let's sneak it in on the summer when everybody's on vacation, which keeps being thrown around. It was, here, let's give it time so that we're not right up to the deadline of the meeting and having everybody be blindsided by it. Like, let's hear from the people. So that was the intention. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that I heard earlier about the price of the land, I feel like as a landowner, not necessarily as a developer, but as somebody who owns land and pays property taxes, that you have a right to sell your to sell your property for what it's worth. You want to maximize your gain, right? You want to, and if you look at the church property, which is directly adjacent, right? 7.16 acres. The town willingly paid, I think it was $415 that's about $60,000 an acre. That would bring the Cooper property, if you just use that same cost per acre logic, up to over $2 million. So it's like for people to say, oh, it's not worth anywhere near, they're inflating the price just to like make it so the town can't buy it. It's like none of, I think it's a fair price. It's a fair, we're not overpaying for it, but we're not stealing it either. It's a fair market value. My feeling.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders in the back there.
Yeah, my name is George Sanders, 672 Great Road. This is an emotional roller coaster here. I find that all parties are not on the same sheet of music, if you will. A lot of misinformation here, people not hearing for the first time or whatever. I consider what information that I've obtained, I basically got out the Littleton Independent, and went from there. I had a conversation with a person and got a little bit more in-depth knowledge about this particular farm. I can say that the Cooper Foundation has been the chairman on the Littleton Council on Aging, former chairman and member. The Cooper Foundation has been very good to the Council on Aging and needed people in the town of Littleton. So I think that the Cooper Foundation and the owners thereof, they have the right, to sell this land. But the town also has the right, as long as it's under 61A. And that's what people need to understand. The town has to waiver that in order for a developer to go forward and they come out of 61A. It's the same way the churches. They get into the same category too. The town can say, no, we don't want to develop. I had that situation in Lunenburg with my church. In Lunenburg, they want the houses in there, so they end up saying, we're going to take the first right to this land. And they purchased it. I wrote my information in regard to having to see a proposal that was submitted, that was in the newspaper there, that it's usually unusual for a developer want to give back so much into a community. And I find that, I think the heart of those that was trying to do this is probably perhaps in the right place. But I also think that the people of this community has a right as well. And as I look at it right now and looking where the wetland at and so forth and so on, I think that the town needs to stand fast in regards to not waiving their right with regards to this. And I'll tell you why. Because I think there's a lot of information got to come forth by the developer, and perhaps to include the Cooper Foundation farm owners in terms of just what you want to do. I think that the town, in a sense, has said that we want to preserve this farm. That seemed to be what's on the website with all the letters that's been written and so forth and so on. But at the same token, I think as people look at this, they're concerned, well, how much land can we buy? We can't buy it all, that's right. And people have the right to sell their land, and builders, developers have the right to come in and ask for permits and so forth and so on. Now, they have these contingencies attached to this purchase order. We as a people, and for the selectmen to vote on that, that needs to be settled. We need to know exactly what is it. You have to take some chance. So you can't expect to say, well, if you don't get this, we're going to back out on this and that. So we just prolonging this. And if you're serious about it, you pretty much know if you've had engineers to go in there and develop this in terms of what you can do, what you can't do. I have a question here with regards to, the paper said that $50,000 was already put into testing of the soil. When was the purchase agreement made, and when were these tests done? Can anybody answer that? Go ahead.
Matthew Field.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
We did our perk test depots 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago. We had the wetlands delineated or flagged a week and a half ago.
Okay, and when did y'all sign the purchase?
April.
When did we do that?
On the website. It's on the website.
It was in April.
April.
In April, okay. So this has been signed for some time, so there was a time lapse there that you was going forth and hoping that bring this to the town that you could sort of kind of move forward with it?
No, what we really, I'm a Littleton resident, born and raised here, family, second generation builder in town. We brought this forward with this design, thinking that it was a good thing for the town. It met a lot of needs with the town. It's not a large subdivision. It's not what you see up on the Acton line, all clustered together. It's not the 109 acres, 108 units that are apparently still alive in Littleton, Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
What's that?
108.
108?
On
Great Road. Mr. Kimball's. Yeah, well, this is 21 houses. This is not an overbearing subdivision. It's set back off the road. We've met all the wishes of the Cooper family. And as developers, we have a number that works for us. It's not, we have going on up on the Durkee Farm, 38 houses, I believe, that are also under 61A. There's other properties that are much bigger and more intrusive than what we're proposing.
less amenities.
With no amenities to the town. What are those developers giving the town? They're giving a ball field, walking trails, 3 affordable units, a house to the town.
Okay, so, Mr. Field, we appreciate your comments. I just want to make sure, Mr. Sanders, you're all set. We have a lot of folks here, so.
Okay, I just, thanks for the opportunity
You got
here to voice my concerns. I think we got a serious issue here that really needs to be dealt with.
Yes, indeed. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'll come to you next.
Brian Tarbach, 16 Fletcher Lane. I just want to put a little meat on the bones to Mr. Neil Peoria's comment. The state budget models, and 5 years in the FinCom, I think I have a little experience reading state budget models, say regardless of the number of kids in those houses, houses typically cost $1.25, $1.23 in services.
Oopsie.
This wasn't me. At least $1.23 in services for every dollar in taxes they bring in. So to say that this will be a net tax benefit to the town is simply false. I would also remind folks that some years back, when we did the Shaker Lane renovation and added 100 seats, just 100 seats to Shaker Lane, it cost the town, if I recall, $4.4 million. So there will, as we add houses, we do add seats, and that does have a cost to the town. So those are 2 comments. I also have a question. It's a bit of a delicate question, and so I want you to hear me. I'm asking it as a question. I'm actually looking for an answer. I am troubled that the attorney for the developers is also the chair of our zoning board of appeals. And I have the highest respect for Ms. Gould, but it certainly, one could imagine an appearance of conflict of interest where the ZBA adjudicates policy for, legal land stuff in town, and clearly I'm not a lawyer, and it troubles me. If someone could explain to me how it, again, highest respect for Ms. Gould, but how, it certainly has the appearance of a possibility of conflict of interest, and I want to have some peace of mind about that.
Thank you. So I'll make one comment, and if Sherry wants to talk about it, that's fine. If not, I'm okay with that too. It's not before the ZBA, period. End of discussion. It's before the Board of Selectmen. So, Sherry, if you want to say anything, I mean, I don't think it's appropriate. You know, you represent a lot of folks, and she does it quite well. So, I don't think it's before the ZBA. I don't think that if it was, she knows what her boundaries must be. So, yes, ma'am.
Ashley Davies, Sudbury Valley Trustees. Is it okay if I speak?
Yes.
I'm not a resident. As I understand it, if the town doesn't waive the right of first refusal, which it seems like the town residents don't want the town to waive that, as Sherry said, there are two options. Either the Fields could wait and let the clock run out and go forward with the development in 1 or 2 years, or they could present a bona fide offer to which the town would have to match. I want to say I don't think this is a personal at all to the Fields. I mean, this is a particular property. If this was happening anywhere else, I think the residents would be thrilled with the proposal. I think this has to do with restoring agriculture in town, preserving agriculture, the fact that it's abutting the Church Meadows property, which the town spent a lot of money on, and making that worthwhile. So as Sudbury Valley trustees, we're here, if we can work with the Fields in going forward where they decide they're going to let the clock run out, and we can help make it, really sit better with the community, we would do that. If you decide to put forth a bona fide offer that the town would match, we could work with the town to try to match funding to make it all work. And I think we've done a little research, and we think we could find funding to make it all work. So I just wanted to make sure that it's out there, that we could support it. And I think it's fair that the Coopers feel that they should get what they deserve. This is their property, it's their right. They've gotten a tax break from 61A, but it's their land. If it comes out, they deserve to get, the value of their property. So, but I think, if conservation is what the town wanted to do, we can help find the money to make the Coopers happy. So, we want to see agriculture preserved. Of course, we can't buy it all. We'd love to do that. But I think this is an iconic piece that has been at the heart of the town for a long time. So whatever we can do to make this work for the town, and we're here.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, no comment. Got a lot of folks here.
I just want to make a comment about
Go ahead.
Ms. Davies' comments. You mentioned preserving agriculture in the town, and certainly that's important to, I won't say all of us, because I don't speak for everybody in town, but for many. Based on what's been proposed, what the developers proposed, and if it were to come to fruition, we'd have more agriculture from that property than we currently have.
We've offered it to a local farmer that needs more land they can't afford to buy farm, and she's going to farm the farm.
All right, very good. Yes, sir.
Sure. Don McIver. I guess what I'd like to first say is that, I think it's great everyone is supportive that the Coopers deserve whatever the land is worth. And that's quite true. That's just not the trustees, it's all the beneficiaries. Certainly when we're in the process of acquiring the Prouty land, John Prouty was going to give a good chunk of it, then he died. Then there were 3 generations involved. And that's what happens. When someone passes away, it's the trust and the heirs. And I think everyone is just very straightforward that all heirs of that trust deserve a fair share of what the land is worth. But there is a question of what it's worth. And I'm glad to hear John Avery's involved. John Avery, in fact, I hired him for the Conservation Trust for the Prouty land. We hired him for Church Meadows. And if, in fact, we get to some area where we have an interest of preserving some for conservation and or agriculture, put that together, then the Conservation Trust might be willing to share some of the costs. But that's up to discussion. What I would like to do, this last week, the Board of Selectmen have tasked all the committees in town to comment on the proposal before the town. And
To comment
people-
on the waiver of the first right of refusal.
And also the proposal, that was suggested in the memo. I haven't seen the memo, but I know people read it. And there are a lot of questions. I'd like to answer some of those questions very briefly, but it would require putting up 2 slides from the website on that proposal.
What are you trying to do here, Don?
I'm just trying to answer some questions that
Answer
people in the
what is
audience-
the question, and then propose the answer, please.
Well, it would help if I could,
What is the question?
well, it isn't a question, it's really trying to address concerns.
What are you
that-
trying to address? I guess what I'm asking you. Where are you going with this?
There was a 6-slide thing with some images and some text on it about what was involved with the proposal. Some was cost, some was percentages, things like that. And I'm going to submit a letter to you that people can read online.
Okay.
I would like to hit some high points, just so there's some sharing of
You
information.
heard tonight that the proposal has changed, so if we go back to the original...
Excuse me?
We heard tonight that the proposal has changed. So to go back and look at old information, I don't think is useful for anybody here. We do have a new proposal before us. They've changed the development itself, so if you have questions about that, by all means.
The stuff I haven't seen. Yeah, I think Sherry has something to...
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to be rude at all. I just needed to tell you that I need to leave at 7:50. You've scheduled this until 8,
Okay,
and I just need to leave. I have another Boxborough meeting.
you got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just run through what I have here, even though I don't have the benefit of what we all struggle with. And I'll submit a letter, and then people can read it
Fantastic.
online. Is that okay? Does that work?
Fantastic, go ahead.
Okay, just quickly, there's a question about how much percentage conservation land is in town. And we're at 14%, and someone's questioning whether we...
So let's, I hate to interrupt you, Don, but, I want to stay focused on the Cooper property. If those ancillary questions that somebody has asked previously, by all means, let's get a letter in so you can be published.
Well, it was the proposal that I'm addressing, I'm exactly addressing some of the concerns there.
Okay, so
Presented.
why don't you put that in writing to Keith? I think that would be very helpful.
I will, but boy, it'd sure be nice in a public hearing if the public could hear something. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but, this is a public hearing.
I understand that. So be brief and let's,
Yes.
to go back on old stuff,
This isn't old stuff, it was last week,
Okay, it wasn't last week.
So anyway, just to answer the question, I have struggled going around, and actually, we lag all of our neighboring communities. That's it, you can read it online. The state average is about 25%, places like Groton have 38 to 40% protected, but we're at 14%. So, that said, Chapter 61A designation really has nothing to do with protection. It's between the landowner and the assessors, and a lot of towns have a large amount of 61A that's really sort of irrelevant for the discussion. There was a question about how the town finances conservation, and this is the amount of money that would be needed. And you can read it online, but say, for example, the Prouty property, the town paid $750,000 for it. We got $750,000 matched with foundation and grant money, and there was additional money thrown in, so it was very cheap. And the same thing for the Yap property. We've got $500,000, actually, with the help of Sudbury Valley trustees.
I think Mr. Avella pointed out earlier, as far as the financing is concerned, that's a due diligence that this board must do, and we're just not there yet.
Well, what I'm saying is that the majority of the purchase price of most conservation land in town has come from outside money, grant money, geared for conservation and agriculture. So it's new money brought to the table, and there are quite a few sources that would be appropriate here. That's just summary, that's the message. And read the letter, it will help. And that's especially to the Yap land, which there was huge amounts of money there. The other, well, and also, I guess I mentioned other cases where U.S. Morrison gave us $1 million, got $700,000 for Long Lake, grant money. Big chunks of money that actually paid for things and make it, since when purchasing conservation land or agricultural land, there are really 3 steps to it. one, you make sure it's worth it, because no one wants to protect something that isn't worth it. You know, there are places to build, there are places to protect, so you make sure it's worth protecting. Secondly, you go out and get a huge chunk of money, outside money, to make it happen. And we're hearing from Sudbury Valley trustees, they're aware of some things, they have a track record of doing that for us. And the third thing is, once you get it, there are no costs of community services, schooling, plowing, any of that, or maintenance of the road. And one of the attachments I add to this letter is what was done in the Bennett Orchard subdivision, the Sanderson land, which went through a whole subdivision process and followed, well, I'm trying to explain, there's a whole process of determining the cost of community services. We used to have it on our website. They use it, it's a public document, it's in 2 pages, and in their case, they showed for putting in 35 residential houses, it cost, and having a road to access them, turning the road to the town, I believe it was $17,000 for the town to maintain that road and repair it and to snowplow it as an ongoing annual expense. And for the houses, it was fairly substantial. In fact, I think it shows $210,000 per year, ongoing forever, to actually subsidize the services. So it's a net loss in tax money. There's a tax burden any place. This isn't to criticize anyone's development or anything else, but here's a developer who went through the numbers, showing the best case, and saying for putting residential houses on a lot, the town has to subsidize it. And it was to a rather substantial amount. And I think if people don't care about agriculture, wildlife, trees, whatever, they might care about dollars. And you know, you've heard the message from several other folks that to put in residential development, you have to subsidize it. Taxes go up. And I think that's why our taxes have gone up throughout the town, because of a lot of residential development. But you know, don't look at my numbers. Look at the numbers that the developer, a very good developer, I'm not criticizing other developers, a very good developer, put together. Substitute numbers for here and see what you come out with. And the same thing for the length of the road. So that's really what I want to say. There is a cost for development. It sounds like we can raise some money to acquire this if the buyer is willing and interested to talk about it. And we could get a real benefit of, you know, the agricultural land, maybe agricultural land in a ball field. I know some alternatives have been generated, which I know you have in your possession. And that's something we should look at. We should look at alternatives. We should determine the fair value of the land so everyone's treated fairly and move from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll submit the letter.
Yep, very good. Rick, go ahead, and then I'll come over here.
Rick Finley. I just want to take issue with Chuck's, Mr. DeCoste's remark about the land being in more agriculture after this is done. Currently, the land is in total agriculture, if you count the haying of the fields, as well as the squash fields that are down towards Acton. Were you saying something else, or was it?
I guess I didn't take the haying of the fields into consideration. But it would be actively farmed, and the perception of people like myself would feel as though with someone who actively runs a farm that produces produce.
Yeah.
So I guess a more active agricultural use.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Paul Lucas, Fletcher Lane. First, I'd like to say I appreciate the efforts in preserving the wooded marshlands and the view on Great Road, but my concern is more down the road with developments. As we've heard, there's many other properties in Littleton that are potentially developable. I think because of what's already happened on the Acton line and others that have happened are in process now, I think we're getting a bit of a knee-jerk on this, and that may be why, myself included, is I'm just concerned what our town is going to be 5-10 years down the road if all these properties, or most of them, considering we can't purchase them all, do become developed. What's the impact on our town financially, traffic-wise? You know, it's a very complicated situation when you look to the future. And no one development concerns me, but the overall picture does, and I would ask that the board consider that when you make your decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Jerry, one more time.
Okay, this is an easy one. It's more for the record than anything else. I just want to make it clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, the right of first refusal does not diminish in any way what the Coopers get for the money. What it says is the town has the right to match any bona fide offer put forth by anybody else. So the Coopers get the same amount of money whether the land is sold to the town or a developer. Is that not correct?
You are correct.
That was easy.
Gary Austin, 162 Whitcomb Ave. I just want to understand a little bit about this. If we waive our first right of refusal, this is what we will get. The gateway to Littleton, which is the scenic view, will stay the same. If we buy the property, we become builders now because we have to put in that 55 and over development. Did I hear that correct? But we still got to put in sidewalks. So now the town's becoming a builder?
If they build.
No, he just said they have to build those 55 and over homes.
You can clarify it, Tom. Go ahead.
So again, we're stepping into the shoes of the builder. If the agreement says that they shall build a 12-unit or a 12-lot over 55 development, we're taking on that burden. How we do it is up to us. We could put out an RFP asking a developer to come to us and say, we're going to lease you this 5 acres, and you're going to construct it, and you're going to operate it.
We just become the managers of the property.
Wait,
to build the home.
We can make whatever deal we want.
Is that if we
It
buy
may
it,
result
or is that
in a
they
net
buy it?
gain to the town.
You can transfer the right.
All right, so let's keep the comments to ourselves. So the question, Gary, was just whether or not we're going to become contractors. The answer is,
No.
we have the flexibility to do what we see fit is best for the town. Yes,
Roland Gibson, Snow Terrace. Just for clarification, Mr. Avella, I thought I heard you say next steps, there would be conversation with Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee. Did I understand that?
That's correct.
Will those meetings be widely announced so citizens can attend?
All right, I would ask you this, if I may. Has this meeting been widely announced?
I'm sorry?
Has this meeting been widely announced?
This meeting has.
Okay, and I think we have that same process for all our public meetings for the Board of Selectmen, so I wouldn't anticipate otherwise, Roland.
Just wanted to be clear.
So will it be well advertised? The answer,
well,
I say
between now
yes.
and September,
As one personal selectman, I would say, yes, it will be well advertised that we meet with the FinCom.
These will be regularly scheduled meeting or special meetings? This is a regularly scheduled meeting.
And it'll be up to the board's decision as to, not just me personally. So if you're asking the entire board, I'd suggest you put it through the chairman, and then as a committee, or excuse me, as a board, we decide
Just
on
want
that.
to be clear.
Thank you. I'm going to hold off on you right now. Any other residents in town want to speak? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Paul Royal, King Street, and I think it was Mr. Gould. I'm sorry?
Lucas.
Yeah, kind of same point, similar mindset, where's Littleton going to be 5-10 years from now? Every summer we're in a water restriction. We are adding all sorts of units down at the Acton line, Saunders Street, whatever that is over there somewhere. We're, from my understanding, mostly on wells. Like, what's our capacity before we have to start importing water? Increasing all of our other services that we provide the residents of Littleton. So all I see is we keep adding housing, which means we have to keep supplying that with resources. And there's we're a small town. We don't have unlimited resources. We don't have, the Merrimack River running through here to draw water like Lawrence does. I used to live in Lawrence, so I understand how their water system works. So just kind of that kind of mentality, I don't see or hear a cutoff of our town can support this size of a population before we have to start going outside for resources. Just, it'd be nice to hear what that is, or have some thought to that, so that we have a goal of maybe limiting what kind of developments we can do going forward.
Sure, in regards to water, the best resource would be the Light and Water Commissioners, but,
Clear, but I haven't heard any
I get your
discussion.
point, I understand your point exactly. When are we overbuilt?
Right.
Right. Yes, ma'am?
Vera Spore, Newtown Road. I was concerned with what Mr. Harrington said, and it seems to me that if the town goes into some deal with the Coopers, that's a different deal. Not necessarily would the Coopers say, well, this is what we said to Matthew Fields, and therefore the town has to do the same thing. I think this would be a new PNS. Is that correct or not?
Yes, go ahead.
I think that what town council was responding to was what would the town's obligations be if the way we acquire the property is by acting on a valid notice under 61A and exercising our right of first refusal. Whatever the terms of that notice are, whatever that deal says, if we're going to acquire the property by exercising our right for that deal, then we are bound by that deal. What has been said by several folks, including Attorney Gould earlier, is that there are a number of ways that town can acquire property and could acquire this property, and we haven't really explored fully the option of, well, that the town makes a different deal with the seller. And that may or may not, probably not, would look the same as the proposal that's on the table.
We just remember, we're here tonight, and we've put the public hearings on at the request, so the public can hear what the fields want to do, and to exercise our first right of refusal. Yes, sir.
Steve Sussman, Lake Warren Drive. These two issues that I brought up a minute ago have to do with the fact that the current proposal is not a bona fide one. So if that was removed, then the town would not be obligated to build housing or whatever other contingencies are in there. So we would not be stepping into the shoes of an agreement which has these issues that prevent it from being bona fide.
We don't have a bona fide offer, right, you are correct. Until we have a bona fide offer, to see what those terms are, we're basing it on what Mr. Fields has.
But as I said, those things that make it non-bona fide are the ones that we're talking about.
Well, not necessarily, not necessarily. What makes it bona fide, not bona fide was, and correct me, town council, if I'm wrong, is the contingencies that the buyer has put in.
If it's for these, Mr. Chairman, if it's for the uses that we're aware of and that described in the first offer, except that there's no contingency, that the contingency removed, then the uses that we'd be facing if we exercise the right of first refusal would be those uses that are in the...
So I need to open up a public hearing at 8 o'clock. I will go back into the question period, but I have to open this public hearing. So let's get this open. Littleton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, August 10th, 8 p.m. Littleton Town Offices, room 10337, Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. On proposed amendments to regulations and fees for the town transfer station effective October 1, 2015. One proposed option is to keep all fees at current level in effect since, please, come on, I gotta read this. Since October 1st, 2010. With no increase in the hours of the operation at the transfer station. Another option would be to increase the transfer station hours by 1 day per week, Wednesday, for which fees would need to be increased as shown below. Comments may be submitted in writing by noon, Friday, August 7th, Board of Selectmen's Office, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass., or in person at the hearing. Littleton Board of Selectmen, James Carr, Chair. Make a motion to suspend the...
So moved.
Second.
Let's move in second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Let's, we can get this wrapped up. Yes, sir. If...
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Are there any must or shall in the purchase order as it stands now?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, real quick question, which I asked Tom Harrington to ask. First of all, I'd like to say I'm glad to hear Keith mentioned this time and the first time we opened a public meeting, the town could make an offer in a friendly fashion. So that's one aspect. But there's also another way the town could be involved. They could transfer the right of first refusal, which your board has done in the past. You've done that in the past to my board, and in fact, I brought back and brought in Sudbury Valley trustees, and you transferred it to them. So that's another mechanism, especially if you didn't want to feel to be on the spot as, quote, the builder. So perhaps Tom Harrington can mention a few words about that?
He did mention that earlier, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
But go ahead, Tom. You
I
want
had
to
heard that just
keep it brief?
recently.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So yes, the town, if the town's acting on its right of first refusal, it can take that first refusal and pass it on to a conservation, either, I think it needs to be a qualified conservation
501c3.
right, association or a political subdivision, and you can either hand the offer over as is, or you can try to make a deal with them if you want something else.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sarah Rambacher, Hartwell F. I heard it mentioned that one of the advantages was that this farmland would be leased or farmed by a farmer in town.
That's part of the proposal, yes.
But in fact, that could happen also if the town bought.
Absolutely.
Right, that's an
Absolutely.
existing model.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
John Tully, 12 Berry Bush Road. Just one other question. I think people have alluded to it all around, but is anybody, the Board of Selectmen or FinCom or anybody else, putting together anything to show the long-term costs of development in the proposal? For instance, we've mentioned the schools, but schools aren't the only cost. Highway, the other cost. If we have a 12-unit over 55 development, there may be some incremental cost to the town for an additional van for the Council on Aging or something like that, or for elder services. But the whole package of long-term costs, which will be with the town forever if it's developed, versus a shorter-term cost of acquiring the property. Is anybody putting that type of number together?
Sure. So what as chair I have done, I've reached out to the assistant town administrator to start working on some numbers, not only for funding, but for the impact also. And those are ongoing right now. The question before us is, number one is whether or not we exercise our first right of refusal. As we move forward, that definitely has to be part of the equation, as Mr. Avella said earlier. So
But that
yes.
can be instrumental in whether you
Absolutely.
exercise or not, yeah.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Go ahead. I thought you were flexing or something, saying, you know what?
I would just like to say, I know this land very well because I was the chairman of the Super Farm Preservation Committee. I'm also an architect and landscape designer and involved in planning, and so I can see this land used to the benefit of the town in great ways. I mean, and as the committee, we did place the playing field down below. The house lot itself, I don't know if you've seen the paintings around town, similar to those, of the old house. I mean, given the right situation, we may end up either rebuilding the old historic farmhouse and barns. They could be cafeterias, it could be a Council on Aging center, it could be a town resource. And I think we should be thinking beyond, at a bigger level for this. And the whole thing could be maintained basically primarily in agriculture, and it could be a farm again at the same time with playing fields and a community building. So
Thank you.
There's great resources here that I think we should be thinking about.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. We appreciate all your input. We appreciate all the letters you sent to us. I know I read them all, and I know most of the board reads them all also, so we appreciate that. Yeah, just most, when I say most, all of us. Again, I want to thank you all for that. Mr. Avella has a closing comment, and anybody else that has a closing comment, by all means.
Part of this becomes a suggestion too for the board to consider, and not necessarily a decision this evening. We've almost discussed this in a binary fashion. town buys town, town doesn't buy the town. And on one side, the developer builds it, the developer doesn't build. Town council has mentioned some things on the shells and maze and wills and what comes under the P&S, whether it's bona fide now or not, but at some point, at least it would seem a bona fide P&S will be presented to the town for us to actually act upon that first right of refusal. And then maybe if we decide to purchase it ourselves at the town, there may be some cost associated with that when you talk about the over 55, what may we have to do? And even if it became zero cost to the town, the over 55 goes in there, it would seem, and all else being equal for the moment, because we don't have a true bona fide agreement, as we all know at this point. That said, what I'd like to offer is to think through this a little bit for the board, is that rather than just continuing on the binary path we seem to be on, the town buys it or the town doesn't, in other words, we exercise the first right of refusal or do not, is that we consider putting together a team of the right town officials to meet with the developer and to enter into some negotiations to see if we can come to something that makes really good sense to the town. So that, and there's other sources of money, as people have said, but we all know, we're all grown up in this room, no such thing as free money. It's coming from someplace, it's come out of some coffer, which means it's not being used for something else. So we could say that we get nothing by purchasing, and it costs us whatever that figure may be, or by some much less figure in town expenditures or other agencies' expenditures, in that the developer has offered to do some things. And perhaps in negotiations, there are some other considerations that perhaps could be offered as we went through this. And how do we make it, well, this is a good news, bad news thing from my own personal perspective. The good news is it's good people involved. The town, the developer, all good people. Bad news, it's not one bad guy you can point to and make a real easy decision, say, no, we don't like the bad guy, we're done. So take that as actually, from the good perspective, it's all good people trying to do good things in our town. So I think we'll try to work together because we've worked together so many times on so many other issues. So that's what I'd suggest we do, at least consider, and then maybe it's when we get with the FinCom, and some of the suggestions have been brought up as to certainly working out the financials and making sure we know what's the cost if we were to do any development at all. If we build one house on the property, what does that cost the town? If it's the 21 units plus the 12, what does that cost the town? And just as you suggested, well, as we go forward, looking at some of those things. So I offer that for your consideration.
Well, I think we need the developer here to answer that.
I'm right here.
So, where are, you came back?
I
I didn't even see you there, Sheila. Sorry.
My name is never mentioned. I do pay all the bills. I sign the checks.
I didn't see you come back.
I was sitting in the back listening.
Okay. So, I mean, what's the board feel about, how do you feel about that? And number one, what are you gonna, we have a proposal, you have a P&S in there right now, when does that expire? Is that something that,
I'm not going away.
Okay. All right.
It's that simple.
I would ask, would the developer be amenable at least to enter discussions? And we may not be able to come to an agreement.
Sure.
It may just be
Of course I will.
for your personal needs and for the town's needs. We may not get there. We have to at least acknowledge it.
I mean, there's other options too, where the Coopers take it out of 61A. And I wait the 366 days.
Understand.
Gotcha.
And nothing.
Sure. So, board members, discussion about that? I mean, what's your feeling on it? Joe?
Just wasted 365 days, but at the same time, it's something the town should consider they could do that and would have no... Exactly. That's what I'm trying. It's something that the townspeople should think about. 1 year goes by, and... It's a year to get permits. Yeah. And they could put houses along the road, and we have no say. So there's some things to consider here. So working with a developer might be a wise thing.
Totally agree.
Chuck?
I agree with you guys as well, but I think there's been a lot.
I live here. I want it right. I really do.
Yeah. I don't think anybody up here thinks that you don't want it right. I think you're in it for the right reasons, and I think that on average, our town grows in population by 74 people a year. So to answer some of the questions about growth, that's happening, people. Whether this happens or, our town grows by about 75 people a year. We've got 57.2% forestry, wetlands, and open space in this town. The number was thrown out about 14.1%. I assume that number is talking about what's deeded conservation. But more than half of the land in this town is wetlands, forestry, or open space. So I find us to still have that rural charm. To Joe's point, I think this is a process, a proposal that we really should be looking pretty hard at. Change doesn't always mean progress, but neither does the status quo. So I'll just leave with that.
Anything else?
Pick a time.
Yeah. So I'll take one more comment from the public. Go ahead.
Yeah, Vera Spore. The 51% is, most of it could be sold tomorrow by the owners. The 14% means something that is really solidly conservation land and is much less than surrounding towns. But the other thing that I wanted to say was that for the people who don't feel that it should be developed, having the Board of Selectmen work with the developer, even though the developer is wanting to do the right thing for the town, he is the developer. And I think that makes lots of people, like myself, feel that the Board of Selectmen are going to work together with the developer, and something will happen that has a lot of development on it. It's not equal-handed, I think, for townspeople if the Selectmen meet with the developer about what should be done.
Go ahead.
There's no reason, excuse me, and it's worthy of you acknowledging that. And I said it's worthy for you to acknowledge that, because the comment has merit. Although I think the five of us live in town also, so certainly there's concerns there.
We all live in town.
And personally, drive by that property every time I come into downtown, and certainly it is a beautiful vista. But I would offer this, it doesn't necessarily mean that any agreement that we work toward isn't a town meeting type approval also. There's nothing that eschews that, at least from my personal view of it. Again, it'll be up to a board decision as to how that actually gets presented in the long run. But I certainly could envision a warrant article, and it would put up the various options to it. Town council knows how to craft these things very well, and it may well be that the town is the one that makes the decision, not the Board of Selectmen. But certainly somebody has to sit down with the individual principals that are involved and at least see where we can go from where we are today.
Well, perhaps you could have some people from the Cooper Preservation Committee that was set up, I guess, a year or two ago, and perhaps a selectman. But I think for the Board of Selectmen to meet with the developers, to me, does not seem...
Certainly not my intention that it would just be any one of us or any two of us that would meet with them. It would be with the smart people, not that you aren't all smart. It'd be the right people, if you will, to your point. Certainly what I would suggest this team be put together with.
I still hold my point that if it's the Board of Selectmen or one or two or three of you meeting with the developers, that is not equitable.
I'm sorry, I didn't articulate it well enough then. I apologize to you. It would include the right people. I can't tell you it's this person, that person, but it's certainly people outside of the Board of Selectmen, because it's not by yourself. You mentioned the Cooper, you mentioned them.
Yes.
It's certainly worth considering. The CPC, the folks, somebody from there, it would seem to make good sense. Now, certainly we get to some point where you get a team that's much too large, so I think some judicial thinking has to go into it as to how large it would be.
Even-handed.
Well, let's schedule that for another meeting so we can really deliberate on it to see what, if in fact we do go forward with it, what that committee would look like. In the back, yes ma'am.
Hi.
Last one.
Joanne Deary from Harvard Avenue. And I just wanted to clarify, I think what was the previous exchange was that Vera was saying that it seems less than even-handed for the selectmen to basically be dealing with the developer, and that she'd rather see maybe the selectmen, okay, you're talking to the developer, you're going to talk with other groups in town that would maybe have a more conservation mindset for it, and it seems like you got to that point. The other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is, you know, a lot of people have said, well, there's no way we can buy all the land in town. There's other parcels that will come up for sale. And that's true. It's, you know, how do you come up with, you know, a lot of money to buy 40 acres or 70 acres or 80 acres? It's really hard to do that. But if you take the long view, for the town itself, And the people like myself and all of us who live here now and pay our taxes, the cheaper road for us is to really not have lots more houses built. And yeah, in the short term, it's hard to pull together the money to make that happen, but in the long term, it saves all of us money to not develop so much land.
Thank you.
And more than money, too.
All right, well, again, thank you all tonight for coming. Excuse
I
me.
mean, serious.
Excuse me.
What, did we put a closed sign up at the Littleton line? I mean,
Not now. All right, so thank you all again. In any other meetings, they will be put on our agenda, but at this point, I'm going to...
When is it continued to?
We
haven't got the date.
I'd suggest 2 weeks.
Yeah, another 2 weeks. So our next
Two
scheduled
weeks from
meeting...
now is August 24th. After that is September 24th.
August 24th.
August 24th.
August 24th, we will be continued. Thank you all.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to open up the public hearing again. Folks, if you want to talk amongst yourself, please take it outside. We have another public hearing here. Thank you. Yes. I'd look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to continue until Monday, August 24, 2015, at 7:30 p.m. The public hearing on the seller's request to waive the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, subsection 14, for the 34.23-acre Cooper Farm property located at 180 Great Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to reopen the public hearing for transfer station fees and regulations. I see Bonnie's here, Mr. Clyde's here, Mr. DeVogel's here. Well represented.
We're continuing. It's the
All
hearing.
right, so the hearing tonight is to talk about fee structure and whether or not to have the dump open one more day per week, which would be Wednesday. Board members, let's open this meeting, let's open this public hearing back up.
And we received no written comment,
Okay.
by the way.
Motion to open it back up?
Motion moved second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. All right, now we're back in our public hearing. So, Mr. Bergman, there were no letters or
We
emails?
received no comments, and as we had recited at our last meeting, that during our most recent bargaining with the highway union, we had agreed to entertain the idea of extending hours to the transfer station by having that matter be up for consideration by the Board of Selectmen for your decision during our annual process of setting fees for the transfer station. So the numbers that have been crunched by Bonnie and Jim show that if we were to extend the transfer station hours for an additional day, say Wednesday, that it would require that the fees be increased from the current level of $100 for the annual sticker to $110, and that the per bag fees would need to go up by a quarter.
For the 33 and 15s.
Stay the same at 8.5.
Yeah, and we have not increased the fees since they were first established under the pay-as-you-throw system in 2010. We've stayed at the same level since then. If you don't extend the transfer station hours, we could maintain the current fee structure in place for another year. But it would cost more to extend hours for another day each week, and we would need to cover that cost by raising the fee.
Sure.
Because it's self-supporting.
Being on the pay-as-you-throw committee and also a frequent flyer at the transfer station, it's I call it my 3-hour tour, because I get to get down there and talk to people, and I always, 3 hours may be exaggerating, but it's a good hour anyways. And one comment that always comes up is the extension of possibility of having the dump open one more day.
And it came through the negotiations, so happened this year, through the union, just for that, to try and increase those hours. Those folks get very busy down there. If you use it, you know that. So that's where we stand. Board members deliberating. Questions?
I guess I have a question. Do we have a need to do this? Is it? I know I go to the transfer station all the time too. To be quite honest, it's never been brought up once to me about having an extra day. So I don't. It's not that I'm not in favor. I just wonder if it's a need and why it's being done.
I say there is a need. I talk to them down there too. I mean, people ask me about it. I think it's more convenience too. It's a convenience thing for folks. So, Jim?
We don't, I'm not there all the time. I don't get the comments. Saturday is our busiest day. If it does lighten the load on Saturday, it's a bonus. I don't think it's an exorbitant cost to be open another day. Wednesday operation just works well for us. I mean, I don't have strong feeling one way or the other, but, we've gone 24 hours a day for the fire department. We've added other amenities here and there, and we've been the same for 20-plus years.
Any other comments, board members?
I just asked, and you mentioned about Saturday being busy. Do we get a greater good by expanded Saturday hours? By an hour either end?
Already a long day.
I guess I'm just knocking on doors and asking people. I got like 50-50, another day or keep it the same. So I'm either way too, but I guess I just want to understand the union's concerns a little bit more. And if this was maybe just one way to address those concerns, and there are other ways, or are we leaving something unaddressed if we don't do something about it? Does that make sense?
We reached the agreement with the union that whether the hours would get extended or not would get decided as a matter of policy by the town and not through negotiations with the union. So we didn't agree at the bargaining table that in order to settle the contract, we had to increase the hours at the transfer station. Rather, the agreement was that we would bring that policy question to the Board of Selectmen for the board's unilateral decision. We don't have to reach an agreement with the union on extending the hours. Rather, the agreement was that we would that we would have a proposal, and the Board of Selectmen, we would have the public be aware of the proposal, and the board would make a policy decision. And so you're free to keep the hours the way they are and keep the fees the same, or to extend the hours and increase the fees. The board's choice.
Thank you.
The only input I've gotten is if there could be a size larger than the 33-gallon bag.
What do you want to get?
Bigger bags, Jim.
Santa Claus.
Cost would be more.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Something we can look into, right?
Otherwise, I'm with Melissa. It's kind of like, yeah, whatever. If it doesn't change, I'll be okay. If it changes, it just gives me another night that I can try to get there if I miss it on Tuesday.
The good news is in 5 years, the fees have not gone up, which is somewhat unusual, usually. Doesn't mean we should increase them, though. And certainly my own personal experience is that there hasn't been an outcry of, I need another day. Or, boy, if it was only on Wednesday, then I could use the transfer station. I'd like to see that if we open it another day, and I mentioned this at our last meeting when we first came up with this subject, is not so much that we increase fees, but to increase the revenue the other way is that more people use it. And it doesn't seem that, at least at the moment, with the information I have, that Wednesday is going to cause more people to use it. And if that information's out there and I missed it, apologize, I'm willing to reconsider based on that. But absent that, I'd say there doesn't seem to be demand that it's going to increase the number of folks. In fact, when we went to pay to throw 5 years ago, we actually, fewer folks used it.
2010.
So, certainly I'm leaning, if we keep fees constant, let's do that. It's a quarter a bag, in the big scheme of things, not a lot of money, but anytime we have the opportunity to keep fees from growing on any of our services, I'd certainly like to be able to do that. If it was going to bring more people in, then I'd be all for it, because now those additional costs are being offset by the revenue brought in by those who are not using it today. So.
It's tough to say on that. I mean, what do you, would more people come if you leave it open on a Wednesday?
I mean, I talked to one person that came to buy a sticker that I know from school, and when I talked to him, well, you have to buy it at the transfer station, then we talked back and forth, and he's in the retail industry, and come to find out, the days that we're open, he works, so he couldn't even buy a sticker because it didn't work for his schedule. But that's one person. But we hear, no matter what you do, somebody works before or after you close. I mean, it works for the people that go to the transfer station. Having that, you know, I shop at Donlands. I can go any day I want because they're open 7 days a week. When they weren't open on Sundays, I didn't shop Sundays. Well, now I can because it's open. I mean, it's yeah.
Bonnie, what were the sticker numbers as far as how many bought since '05 or '10? Have we seen an increase, decrease, or consistent?
They went down, then they started to creep back up a little bit. Some of the people that have left, that went to private subscription have come back, you know, and realized that it's really not that bad.
We've been relatively stable the last few years. It's kind of leveled out at the level that we're at now.
Good. We feel there was a lot of sharing of stickers. We think we had more abuse back then. Now we don't have the abuse because the stickers are, you know,
only one part.
Lower priced, and even if they are used, they have to use bags. So we're getting a revenue stream from that. Before, you could buy a sticker and bring
15 houses.
Yeah.
Seen those pictures.
Yeah.
Now, the price, sorry.
Go ahead. No.
Now, the price increases that you're talking, the fees and the bags, I mean, that's very reasonable. I have no problem with that at all. And if it's a convenience for the people, then I have no problem with that either. I was just hoping someone would tell me where it came from, because I have no idea. Once again, I haven't heard someone say I need it, but it makes it easier for me, because I'm a frequent flyer. I'm there at least twice a week. So if the board thinks it's a convenience for the town, you only spend that much money, then I don't have a problem with it.
Any other comments?
I echo what Joe says. I think if it is a convenience for the incremental increases, I think it's inconsequential. Jim, do you have a strong opinion one way or the other? Not really, right? But if you think it's a convenience, like you mentioned the Donlands thing, I think that's a good point. And the one person that he ran into, and there's a lot of other people that run into those situations, whether it's sports, my kids play soccer every Tuesday and Thursday night, or whatever it happens to me. So just giving them that extra option for a minimal increase seems to make sense. To your point, there hasn't been an increase in health.
Can I ask Mr. DeVogel a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jim, this was obviously part of the union concerns. I just want to know, is it needed? I mean, do you hear from your people a lot that they need to be open that day?
The people up the transfer station, they have said, same as you have, the convenience thing. They see, you go up there and spend the day on a Tuesday and Thursday. It's fairly constant, and you have peak things. But a lot of it is, as what the members of the board have said, convenience. I know myself, same as some of the members, I can't make it there on Tuesdays because I have a prior commitment. Most Saturdays I can't make it because I have a prior commitment. So it's just Thursday that I can make it. And sometimes that's hard for me. Most Wednesdays, I don't have a problem. And that's what the employees up there have found in the people they have talked to. And if I remember right, in the management study done by the, is it the Donahue Institute or the Collins Institute, that was one of the recommendations too, was to increase some of the hours at the transfer station.
Okay.
If I may ask, what did they base that on? What data, other than what's convenient? I get that. Let's open Monday through Sunday.
Why is the town hall open 5 days a week?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Why is the town hall open 5 days a week for business?
Okay, I don't dispute that. But
I mean, it's all relative on how you, if it's more convenient for people. It's
Well, why not pick Monday night?
because operationally, it does not work for us.
Okay, so you just answered your own question on that then, Jim.
No, well, we could change the way we do business, but because our containers get filled on Saturday, they get hauled on Mondays.
Frankly, I'm really okay with the reason you state, but the thing is, it's not based on what we found to be convenient for the people of town, it's what's convenient for the operation based on the logistics that are involved. And that's fair. That's not a criticism. But to raise the price because, all I've heard, if it's convenient, I've not heard anything stated tonight that we have found that 10% of the people, at least we've just talked with.
Do you use the transfer station?
Negative.
Okay, so when I do, I hear, and I talk to people when I'm down there. At all, they come up willingly and able, just have a conversation to say, and usually, it's really bad when around the holidays, obviously, but, you know, why can't we have another day?
Often that at the beginning of the conversation would have been
I
useful.
did.
I didn't hear it quite that
I did.
distinctly, so I apologize.
That's exactly what I said. So,
Because my only inputs have been, why are you going to charge me another quarter for the bag? Don't put another day. So that's been the inputs I've
I have
received.
folks telling me all the time. So, I don't write them down and have my statistics handy, but I know that when I do go.
You do know
people talk.
96.3% of all statistics are made up on the spot.
Perfect. Any other questions? I'd look like take a motion to close the hearing. Yeah, wait until
Motion to
we're gonna-
close. Second.
Motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
We will now open it up for public input.
Actually, part of it was actually answer why couldn't it be Monday? Because Monday is like right after that big, weekend that you have a party or something, and you gotta get rid of stuff.
What's her address?
No, Barbara Staples, Corporate Lane. So I'm kind of like ambiguous on this one, actually. I do go to the dump probably once a week, and I have a family of 5, but we do a lot of composting. I would say that given that with a statistic of 74 people a year, you're going to have to address this eventually. I can't say that, a quarter bag is not going to make a huge difference to us. So, but yeah, there is a convenience to an extra day. I can agree. For people that do go to the dump versus have it hauled at their curbside, I don't think it's going to make a difference. People just like that convenience of bringing it down to the end of theirs.
We're still a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I've noticed on my street it doesn't make a difference. I know that there's a lot of folks that don't work on Monday. That's the day that like haircutters take off or restaurants, and that's the day that those people do their housekeeping and stuff. So on Monday actually makes more sense to me than Wednesday.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My wife wishes I'd go to the dump more often. But my only question, I'm not real concerned for myself about the quarter range, but what about the seniors?
Seniors.
The bags are the same for all.
Bags are the same for all.
Oh, they are?
Yeah. And that's how it has been for. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Sarah Rambacher, Hartwell Ave. I've heard a lot of anecdotal, I hear it, I don't hear it. It seems like it's a pretty easy thing for someone with a clicker to, how many cars go through at any given time during a week. I mean, the library counts patrons. If you don't already do it, I wouldn't be surprised if you did already know how many people go through the dump in a day. And I would guess you have an idea of what capacity you have to put people through. So why not actually look at the numbers? And as far as what days make sense, and even whether another day makes sense, you've done SurveyMonkey things out to the town before. Why not do that and get actual data rather than just hearsay?
They did count years ago. We can have upwards of 1,500 people on a Saturday. I'm not sure, I don't remember what the counts were. It's definitely less Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the goal was, that's why we're open late, to try and take away some of the Saturday traffic. But we need to set fees because we sell stickers starting September 1st.
Gotcha. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Paul Warrow, King Street. Yeah, I'm all for an extra day because there's weeks where I can't make it there on a Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. So if it was open on Wednesday, that's a night where both my wife and I are typically home. So, yeah, any extra day is always beneficial, especially with, we close at 7 on, I think it's 7. But yeah, even like an extra half hour, that'll help get the kids to bed to be able to run,
Gotcha.
But, yeah, I know that's a lot to ask too, to keep those guys out late in that half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Bigger swap shop.
Put that online. My wife would like to pre-shop
All
before I
right.
go there.
Thank you very much. All right, so, board members, I would look for a motion.
Make a motion to,
Go ahead.
good, you got it. Mouth is open.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Town Code Chapter 181 to approve the fee structure for use of the Town of Littleton Transfer Station effective October 1st, 2015, by increasing transfer station hours by a one-day a week Wednesday and increasing fees from 100 to 110 for annual sticker, 30 to 35 for seniors, plus bag fees as set forth in the public hearing notice.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. And thanks all folks for the comments. So let's go back to on the agenda for public input. Actually, reading the mail. Go ahead, Keith.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, just a few things. First, we have a memo from the chief of police describing and the chief's here, so maybe he could just say a word about his
come on up, chief.
A safe and secure meeting place for online transactions in person.
Sure. I had a conversation with Selectman Avella about a lot of cities and towns have been coming out with the reminding people that if they do an online transfer or an online purchase or picking something up from somebody, you don't want to do it necessarily at your house, or you don't feel comfortable. Police stations monitored 24/7, the parking lot's monitored 24/7, the front lobby's always open to the public, the bathrooms, again, is video and monitored, and the dispatch personnel are there. So we're basically going to be advertising that the station is, for lack of a better term, an online safe zone. Town of Concord just did it. Several other cities and towns have also done it. We've always been a custody safe zone where people exchanging their children over custody issues are constantly in the building. So, we're there. It's a great facility, so we're going to open it up for that purpose.
Nice.
Thank you.
Members, questions?
Just a point of clarification. The chief mentioned that there's been a video monitoring, and then I'm not sure if there was any punctuation, then you said in the bathrooms. Just want to make sure that everybody knows that there's no video cameras in the bathrooms. At the police station, there's video monitoring.
Thank
Just
you,
about
Mr.
it.
For that clarification, I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's awesome. All right, thanks, chief. How are you going to do it? How are you going to do your advertising?
We'll put out some press releases, we'll get it on the website, we'll get it out there that way, and just, keep pushing it out there. With different initiatives, we'll just keep reminding people, and just let people know.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, Mr. Bergman.
Just a couple of other items. One is that tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at IBM in Littleton, the 495 Metro West Partnership will be conducting one in a series of meetings that it has throughout the year with members of the state cabinet. Tomorrow's meeting will be Secretary Matt Beaton of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and this month, it's unusual, this month that event will be in Littleton. So I had sent invitations out to all. I heard back that PJ and Melissa and I are scheduled to go, and if anyone else hadn't done that, I can try to do it, but because you're entering private business, we need to just get prior clearance. They don't do background checks or anything.
I trust Mr. Avella and Ms. Hebert.
But that's at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, bright and early. And then on Thursday, the 495 Metro West Partnership will be back in Littleton. Again, we offered as a host site the Littleton Police Headquarters, and not just to conduct online transactions, but that and I'm very excited about this meeting, that the MBTA and Mass DOT want to unveil their new schedule for the Fitchburg commuter rail line. And this year, we'll find out about it ahead of time. We will be briefed. They've invited folks who need to know from the surrounding communities and are up and down the line to attend a meeting where there will be a discussion about what the new schedule will be, to be able to talk about issues that we care about, like the reverse commute and last mile. And I really appreciate the Mass DOT and MBTA reaching out to us this year. Far cry from a year ago when they simply made the change, and it was about almost 2 weeks later before we even found out about it, and they never even issued a press release about it. So we're working very closely with the current administration on issues like this, and so it's really great that they're doing this outreach, and it's great that they can have the meeting in Littleton. And then last item was we received an invitation for August 15th from the Littleton Group Home Annual Friends and Family Barbecue. So
I'll make a note with that whole agreement and document is...
It's moving forward more slowly than we'd like it to, but it's not for lack of trying on our part. The DFCF attorneys have got involved, so it's kind of bogged down the process a little bit, let's say. However, we are sending, several officers are going to the Friends and Family luncheon. I'll stick my head in also and say hello, but been much more responsive since our meetings, I will say that. But we're still moving forward. We're just trying to wade through the state bureaucracy.
Gotcha. And I would go, but I have a prior commitment. Actually, I'll be right down the street at the VFW, but see if I can break out. Thank you. Public input. Any public input?
Because of the severe wind and rainstorm on the 4th of August, Tuesday, we have that we open the transfer station for free debris disposal until the 15th, which is next Saturday, the Saturday 15th. Because it's not terribly widespread, so we don't need a long time, but we wanted to allow residents to be able to get rid of their material.
Fantastic.
You said until the 15th?
Yeah.
Put on a Wednesday, too.
I wasn't going to ask.
Yeah, I guess I'll work with Bonnie and Keith. When do we implement? Because do you have to go to town meeting for the transfer station? How does that work?
We'll do an adjustment in the fall time to appropriate the additional revenue that you're programmed to get.
Okay, so when we start, October 1st or?
Yep. October 1.
October 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just real quick. We're going to be doing a bunch of little initiatives. School's starting in a couple weeks, believe it or not. And so, again, we're going to be looking at some traffic issues, different roadways. We're getting a lot of complaints from residents on different speed issues, whether it be on Russell Street or King Street or Neshoba Road. So you'll see some increased activity. We're going to use some of our community policing money to run some extra radar patrols or crossing patrols. We're getting constant complaints about people running the stop sign down on the common, right there at the corner. And so we're going to be out there monitoring a little bit more, trying to do some, not necessarily enforcement as much as education. There could be enforcement consequences, obviously, but if we can get people to slow down their speeds on certain roads and stop at the stop signs and the crosswalks in the common. We've been noticing that the speeds in the common have been creeping up again, especially when it is clear. So you'll see a little bit more enforcement activity out there over the next over the next month.
Great. Great. Thank you. All right. Member updates. Mr. Knox.
Just remind people that on A week from Thursday will be the last third Thursday of the season. We go June, July, and August. Welcome any new vendors that might be interested to take part in it. It's been a success again this year, so it's a great outside activity and it's well attended.
Thank you. Ms. Hebert?
Just super quick. Jim mentioned the tornado that happened this week. I was working from home when that came down, and to do my job, I work on the computer all day, so I need electricity because I need the internet and the phone to do my job. So whoever was around saw it come down like, I don't want to use the word, a ton of bricks, we'll say it that way. And it was like hail, dark, rain, within a matter of minutes. And right outside my house in Dahlia Drive, a huge tree went over and took out our power immediately. So I was like, yes, I don't have to work. This is wonderful. Within like negative 1 minute, there was police down there was fire down there, the electric company was down there. I was like, slow down, guys, slow down. 2 hours, I had power back again, which was a bummer for me from a work perspective, but I just have to say, great job to highway, police, fire, electric, everyone involved in repairing that. It was like nothing even happened. It was crazy, so thank you.
Awesome. Mr. Novello?
If I just may piggyback actually on a bit about roads. Sometime back, we talked about truck restrictions on some of our roads in town. We had a resident come forward and ask about Harwood. Where may we be as far as looking at that? I don't know if it's Jim or Matt is the right person to answer that question.
You can see by the blank stare, don't really know much about that. I remember him coming in and...
Is that something we could just make an agenda item at the meeting?
Sure.
As to how we want to approach it.
What are you up next for any type of highway situation? Matt, are you involved in that as a public safety?
Part of the problem with the truck restriction that's wanted on Howard Ave is we're actually out of routes to be able to send them to. So, I mean, we certainly can put it forward to a study, but we have to come up with an alternate route. And it can't just be one alternate route, which is send everything to King Street. Like when the Taylor Street truck restriction came in, the alternate route was Porter Road to Sanderson Road, believe it or not. Which of course irked the neighbors in that neighborhood. So that's where I think some of the problem has come in. But certainly we can. What happens is we have to do a count first. We have to do a certified count, which we can make happen. And we have to make sure that we actually even meet the thresholds, which I forget what the exact, I think it's 15% or 10 or 15% of the traffic on the road has to be truck traffic to even be considered for a truck exclusion. We certainly can, certainly have no problem moving forward and working on that, at least working on the original numbers.
I mean, Howard Ave, is that the only one you're hearing about?
I would just offer that we look at the balance. It's not necessarily that we put a restriction on the road, but we look at the balance between roads that we may have restrictions on, and do they make the best overall sense for the town?
Yeah, I think if you could get something like that for us, that would work. Okay. So who ultimately makes the decision? DOT? I mean, Mass DOT, who makes the decision?
Yeah, once you present them with the information, they have to, because the town has to come up with the alternative routes that meets everybody's satisfaction, and Mass DOT would have to approve that.
Gotcha.
It was like when Neshoba Road was being reconstructed, if you remember, people had talked about trying for a truck restriction and looking at the numbers of because the studies were already done for that road, they didn't even meet because the truck numbers weren't high enough for the state to they wouldn't even consider it. So
Gotcha.
We'd have to get the numbers, but certainly we can work on that.
Okay, fantastic.
What we'll do too is I'll get you a list of all the roads that have the truck exclusions on them. That would kind of show you
that would be helpful.
The puzzle.
Not knowing it at all, that would be very helpful. Mr. DeCoste.
The only thing I want to bring up is earlier tonight we were talking about obviously the Cooper property, and in the past when this first came up we were talking about it'd be nice if we had a list of all potential properties that we want to take a look at and maybe kind of keep our eye on. One property that I've been kind of keeping my eye on and kind of keeping in mind that we're looking to potentially do something in the common area is 12 Robinson Road. It's I can't remember the name of what the farmhouse is called, but that's on the market. It's a historical house, supposedly built in the late 1600s. It's currently on the market for just over $300,000. Pretty good piece of land, And if we were going to do something in the common area with parking in the rear, that type of thing, it might be an opportunity for us to get on our list and see if there's something we can do with that property.
Sure.
And, with CPC, one of the components is housing.
Yeah.
Might be some way to roll that in, Historical Society, I'm not exactly sure, but I just wanted to
I
kind
don't
of...
know how that would work, though, on that, that would be public housing, right? If we bought that?
Historic, too.
It's historic, too?
Yeah. It's more of an awareness thing, just to kind of, I don't know where we navigate with this, but just want to kind of bring it out there and...
That's a tough one.
We can look into it, but it would, I don't know.
Would
it even be
It would be
eligible?
eligible for CPA funding, but I think it might more typically be if there was some other entity other than the town that owned it and wanted to do something with it and preserve it historically, that maybe we could, the town might provide some funds. I don't know that, typically we don't get in the business of purchasing housing
private
except,
housing.
towns don't purchase housing except to use it as housing.
All right, so we have another public hearing here at 8. What was that?
No, we did it.
The goals.
Yeah, oh, that's right, 8:30.
Oh, jeez. Wow. I thought it said 8:50. I just put my glasses on. All right, so thank you. I don't have anything for member updates. Let's move on. Unfortunately, my error. We have another public hearing that was continued for adoption of goals for fiscal year 2015. Oh, boy. Do I have to read this?
You don't have to read that.
It was already read.
It was already read the last one.
So it's the adopt.
And
Move to waive reading.
Yeah, and because we posted, I put up on the board last time the notice, which in and of itself was hard to read. I came up with this single slide tonight.
So I was unable to attend that meeting. I did watch it. Selectman Hebert did a great job. We're at the point now where we have to reopen this, so let's reopen this public hearing. I'll look for a motion.
We'll reopen the public hearing for the adoption of goals for fiscal year 2016.
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All right, so further discussion, board members on this.
I think the three that were present were pretty much all set. We just want to give you the opportunity to speak on it if you wanted to.
No, but we're good.
Just one little factoid, a goal of going paperless. I weighed 18 meetings worth of paper for us, 20 pounds. It was just 18 meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Clavin.
Yes, you're welcome.
Oh.
A little fact there. Someone has a lot of time in the
And everyone knows your name.
Well, thank you. Nope, that's very interesting. I love recycling, but if we can even cut out the waste stream, that would be great, too.
We'll be able to go to the transfer station on Wednesdays.
Fantastic, Jim.
With all your
Thank you,
recycling.
Jim.
Well played.
Make sure it's ready.
Yeah.
People that don't use it, it would be a good opportunity to join us.
Yes, sir.
All right, so any other further comments from the board in regards to the goals? All right, look for a motion.
Thank you guys for doing that.
Yep, I'd look for a motion to close it.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll open it up for public comment. Any public comment on the goals for fiscal year 2016? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt goals for fiscal year 2016 as set forth in the public hearing notice.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the fiscal year 2014, bless you, goals for the Board of Selectmen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
All right, we have our goals.
8:45, we're a little late, running a little late here. Bond anticipation for Church Meadows. Bonnie?
Yes, we had a bond, a ban issued for the amount of $203,500 for 1 year at .550 to Unibank. It's a small band, we didn't have very much interest in it, so it's a little bit higher rate than we got the last time, but still not too bad.
That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Any questions? Look for a motion.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the sale of $141,500 general obligation municipal purpose bond application note of the town at 0.70% dated August 14th, 2015, and payable August 12th, 2016 at Unibank at par.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. New Estate Road Reconstruction, Onyx Corporation, $2,395,575. Wow. And Green International for $158,380. Jim, is the contract?
Yep, they checked all our references, and ready to sign them up. We had 6 bidders, I believe.
Onyx done business with the town on roads before?
Yeah.
Yep, they did the MassWorks project on Great
that's
Road,
right.
and they also did 300 Main Street.
Bidding went well. Bonnie, good. Any questions, board members?
Way below the engineer's estimate. 2.4.
Lots of good information in the packet. Answer all the questions.
Very good. Look for a motion.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to award to and authorize execution of a contract for roadway reconstruction of New Estate Road with Onyx Corporation of Acton, Mass. at its low bid of $2,395,575. I said that wrong. $2,395,575 with the execution of said contract subject to receipt of performance and payment bonds and certificates of insurance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
There's another one here.
Yep. That's for the Green International.
For the resident engineer.
For the resident engineer.
Go again.
Yep.
Okay. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to award a contract for resident engineer and construction administrative services for the New Estate Road reconstruction project to Green International Affiliates, Inc. of Westford, Mass. in an amount not to exceed $158,380.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
And just for the board's information on that, we're still going to bring back at some point the proposal on an engineering staffing position. The form of the contract that we'll execute with Green will have an escape clause in it, so that if we give them, I think, do we agree 30 days? 30 days notice. Should we make a decision during the life of this contract that we have an in-house engineering position, we can give notice to Green and take over that function with the staff person, so.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, Dan?
And if we don't have the answer tonight, but you open that, thank you. The $158,000, if we did have that PE on staff now, do we know what that figure might be? Approximately, would be something less.
We'd still have to do the contract administration. It would be the resident engineer portion, which
I think that's 128.
is 128 is resident engineer, 128,000. So some portion of that.
Thank you.
All right, next agenda item is the street scan pavement management data and services. Jim, why don't you give us a little update as to what you're looking to do here?
It's a new technology to evaluate the roads, where it's basically done through computer technology. It takes all the human factors out of looking at it, does it through each item, looks at a particular thing, and if one discounts the other, and they just kind of blend together. And they can do it in a very quick fashion, which the other old-fashioned way of looking at each road just takes a lot of time and effort for input. They claim they can drive the roads in about 2 days, and we can have the information after they drive in 2 to 3 weeks at most.
What's it do, Jim, specifically?
It looks at the surface ride, the cracks. It can locates manholes and catch basins, and it actually has ground penetrating radar. It looks at the pavement thickness and the soil underneath, and it can supposedly predict where your future problems come from.
Defects.
So to get that part of it is a little more money, and we're kind of negotiating with the company we're probably not going to, it checks it all while they're doing the road, but you don't get that information unless you purchase it, because it's just more to process it.
So have you talked to anybody that's done it, and is it beneficial?
It's pretty new.
Oh, is it?
But it's an emerging technology that they're expanding pretty quickly, and Keith looked at the machine, I looked at it on Friday. It's definitely some computer geek technology.
Looks pretty cool, and
We haven't.
The city of Beverly is the first one who's done it online, even while we were trying to schedule our work, which we can get it done in the next month. We can perhaps get it done by Labor Day, but there were a number of other communities that were signing up, a number of the smaller cities too, in particular. And the tools that we will get will allow us to have some objective criteria for deciding what roads need to be done in what order. I think not only for the big picture of the 10-year roadway plan, but I think it's going to be a great tool for just the day-to-day work that the highway department does with our roads. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, board members?
Super quick from my side, annual fees, is that only the $5,000? So we do the one-time stuff and then from there, just to use it, it's the $5,000?
Yeah, if we want to continue to do it, and again, they're so new that they don't really have a good price list, if you want to say, and we're kind of negotiating with them to come up with other alternatives that would work for us to keep it reasonable, because we're looking to do all the roads to get a baseline, and then we can determine from that. But if we're not going to get to roads for 20 years, we don't need to continue to evaluate them. If we already know they're bad or not in good condition, we can pick a certain amount to do each year to upgrade the system and keep it fairly active.
but it is a base cost of $5,000 per year to continue to access the data.
Through the portal.
That we get from the initial inventory that's done. Last time we did a full inventory was it 2006? So we can choose when to do the next one. Could be 5 years from now, could be sooner. But in a year that we are just maintaining that database, it's $5,000.
Does it include sidewalks?
No,
They lane miles.
Yeah, they do have a camera that will go off to the side and like, I don't know if you want to say log it, but no.
Okay. Any other? Go ahead.
Is this an open bidding issue? No?
No, because it's engineering services.
Yes, yes, okay.
So it's exempt.
Then, given that information, and when I hear price list is still being determined, it's a new service and stuff, can we give our folks some latitude to negotiate and make this not to exceed versus an actual amount?
It is not to exceed. It's...
Okay, we'd have to amend the motion then to say that if that's what the truth is.
Because they wanted the 34,000, which is pretty much set, and then the ground penetrating radar piece of it was they were anticipating doing 20 miles, $50 a mile, which was about $1,000. So we don't, until we see the technology and see what we can get out of it, we may not want to do that much.
So not to exceed.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Ready for a motion?
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize execution of an agreement with StreetScan, Inc. of Burlington, Mass. for pavement management data and services in an amount not to exceed $35,000.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, 5D, policy adoption. Short notice items requiring a, town position. Mr. Ravello had developed this
Policy, we've seen it. It's now up for adoption. Any questions, concerns, members? Look for a motion.
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt a proposed policy on short notice items requiring a town position as drafted by Selectman Avella as amended and introduced on July 27th, 2015.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Last but not least is the Sunny Delight update. Sunny Delight, for all you folks don't know, is Very Fine / Sunny Delights / Craft Foods. And Mr. Avella, Keith, Melissa, went on a tour with some state representatives to see what we could do to make sure that property doesn't go vacant. So, Mr. Avella, Keith, Melissa, have at it.
If you would like, Keith did a very extensive down brief that he wrote to us.
Yep.
I'd like to allow Keith to give, because he knows what he was talking about there.
Sure.
It was a very good conversation, and then we can add as we think necessary. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Sure. The information, and I want to thank we put together a team consisting of the vice chair and Selectman Avella. We also had John Golnick, the regional director of the Mass Office of Business Development, and Paul Matthews, the executive director of the 495 Metro West Partnership, meet with some representatives of Sunny Delight. We met with their plant manager and with their realtor, and I have to say, we've been looking for that meeting for some time, and I was glad that we could finally get it together. They did share with us that in their outreach efforts that they have identified a potential buyer, which is in the beverage business. It's a major firm. They did not identify who it is, but did indicate to us that the potential buyer was looking at this site and was looking at least one other site in another state. So that a lot of our discussion during the meeting was to brief the Sunny Delight team on what sort of economic development incentives were available in Littleton and in Massachusetts. And what we agreed to do is essentially put together a briefing packet in writing, share that information with them so that they could share it with their potential buyer. And from that, there may or may not be further discussions with that buyer, between the buyer and the Sunny Delight representatives and hopefully the town, about whether there's some way that the buyer can, if the buyer decides that they want to pursue an economic development incentive to come to Littleton. So John Golnick from the Mass Office of Business Development put together a very comprehensive proposal of what the state offers, which we can forward on to them. I also prepared a draft cover letter, which recites that we had the meeting, that are enclosing information about the economic development incentive program, so-called, that the state offers, indicating that the town has entered into agreements under that program in the past for projects that promote economic development consistent with community character, and that should the buyer wish to entertain discussions with us, that they could contact the town and the Mass Office of Business Development, as is the first step that's described under that program. So that's sort of where we stand right now, that before providing a written response, we wanted to be able to brief the board on the fact that there was a meeting, that there seems to be a potential buyer, for the business. The buyer may or may not want to expand the facility in the near future. I have to say that most of the economic development incentives programs that the state has, which is the short menu of things that we can go off of, are all about job growth and expansion and investment. So.
As Keith noted, it was a very productive meeting, lasted about 90 minutes with the principals that Keith mentioned. A little bit of background, we did ask a couple of questions, actually more than just a couple, but two specifically. And the first one was, we asked, is there anything that caused them to move? In other words, did the state of Massachusetts or the town of Littleton do something to cause their business model not to work well here? The answer was no to that. Then we asked, is there anything the state of Massachusetts or the town of Littleton could have done to keep them here? The answer to that was equally no. The reason was they're consolidating. So it was a business decision to consolidate. And we asked, well, why not consolidate here at Littleton? And that became a case of the production that goes on at Littleton can move to their other locations easily. The type of production that would have to move here if they were to close another facility, or at least consolidate here with that, our facility here in Sunny Delight in Littleton would not accommodate that move. So that was the business decision to consolidate, and then the location of consolidation was based on the facilities that were available, and ours just wasn't conducive. So it was presented as a fait accompli to begin with. We get the news that they will be closing and losing. So how do we try to mitigate this somewhat? And that's what that meeting was intended to do, at least begin the process of speaking with the realtor and letting the realtor and Sunny Delight know that the town and the state are very committed to helping them find a new buyer or a buyer, or in facilitating a move of some business here to town. Chuck, as we know, is going off to some other locations, Mass Brewers Association, well done. It's just one example. And we actually had those sorts of conversations. And they actually even offered some thoughts as to what might have to happen if it was to become a microbrewery thing. We also asked, would Sunny Delight consider leasing? So in other words, it's not just a buy or not buy proposition. And they would entertain a lease also, so if another business wanted to come in there. But getting it on the scope of MassEcon, getting it on the scope of the 495 partnership, and then also the Business Development Office that John Golding represents, now that word is at least getting out. So it's not just in a realtors network, which is extensive, as we all know, for sure, but also somebody that it may not have even occurred to in the first instance. That they may have a prospective buyer, and certainly they're playing their cards close to the chest because they're in negotiations now. And there were two criteria as to whether or not that buyer may come to fruition. And first off, they have to continue doing a business case. So they have not made the business case, and that depends on production and the demand. Is there enough demand out there to warrant another facility? That's being worked now. If the answer to that is yes, the next step then becomes, is there enough capacity and is the facility suitable to meet that demand that this company would realize? So those two questions need to be answered before that particular company would come forward, based on my interpretation, and help me if I misunderstood that, but what the realtor was telling us at the time. So that's where we stand now. Keith's letter, I think, is a very good letter. It communicates back to them, as he said, we met, we came, we saw, we haven't conquered yet, but we're willing to work with you to get that great company back in. That meets the character of the town, that contributes to the town, is a good corporate citizen, much as Sunny Delight has been over these many, many years. Certainly the historical value of the business, I guess we're going to lose that piece of it. But can we maintain the facility, the jobs, regrow those jobs, because they're going to have to be regrown. Ballpark 100 jobs are going away. It's just a fact of life from that closure. How do we work together to regain those jobs, or more if possible? The initial hack is it wouldn't be that many, even if those two questions were answered in the affirmative, demand's there, and they can make the business case here. So that still needs to be worked out. And then some of those initiatives that exist between the town and the state, and any other grants that may be available that would make good sense from a business perspective, and then also from a good fiscal perspective from us here in the town, is how can we work with them. And I think the letter communicates that to them.
Outstanding. Anything, Melissa?
No, that was an excellent summary, I'd say. I mean, I guess the only thing I'd say is we talked a lot about the prospective buyer and what information that they might need. And, as Paul said, Keith's done a really great job of giving that information. So I think it's in parallel. Just as Selectman Novella was saying, we got to see what else is out there. So it's good to work with these guys, but they very well could go, some factor of this doesn't work for me, I'm out. So, yeah, great job. Really good job at the meeting.
Okay, thanks for facilitating it, Keith.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Keith.
It's just staying active. We don't like empty buildings, we have enough in town. I mean, that's a good job. Any other discussions? All right, moving on, consent
We need
agenda.
a motion from to send the letter?
Oh, we do.
Sure, yeah, I didn't prepare a motion, but that would be appreciated.
Go ahead, Paul.
Let me do it. Move that our town administrator send the letter as drafted and in our package this evening to Mr. Sano at Sunny Delight.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Consent agenda minutes. I wasn't here. Mr. Ravello.
Move that we approve the minutes.
Second. Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Oh, that's not saying the date, 27 July. How's that?
There you go. On the 27th, those minutes were approved for.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good evening, thank you.
Thank you.